When was the last time you talked to him, Andy?
The very last time I talked to him, mate, was actually during the 500. When I got back to the bus, Teresa was there, and she said when I got in the door, she said, he's been asking for you. So I got on the radio. You got any advice for me here? That's what he said. Can you imagine a road race? You got any advice for me? And I laughed, just like you did. So I said, Dale, just keep doing what you've been doing, man. You're doing great. You're doing awesome. And I'm like, what the heck else can I say to the guy?
I didn't know that.
And then it was like, okay, see you later.
Damn. The following is a production of Dirty Mo Media. All right, everybody, it's time for another episode of the Dale Jr. Download, the guest segment here on Wednesday, and we got a really unique one for you today. I'm going to have in the studio Andy Pilgrim, Kelly Collins, and Doug Fehan. Doug Fehan was the GM on the Corvette program back in 2001 when Dad and I raced the 24 Hours of Daytona. Kelly and Andy were the co-drivers. This was an idea from them to all get together and talk about that experience and the Corvette program and what that meant to Dad to be able to race in that event. He was very excited about it and very happy to do it. And we're going to learn some pretty new, interesting details around that program and Dad's plans for it. So, let's just get started. It's going to be a lot of fun for me. I'm going to learn a ton of new stuff, I'm sure, during this conversation. And we're going to bring back some great memories as well. So let's get them in the studio and get started. All right, so right here on the Dale Jr. Download, we've got quite the group of guys assembled for this show. We're going back to the 2001 Daytona 24 Hours and the Corvette that Dad and I was a part of. Doug Fehan was a team general manager. You're here today, Doug. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having us.
And then Kelly Collins was one of our co-drivers.
Yep.
How you doing?
I'm doing awesome.
You look awesome.
Yeah.
And then Andy Pilgrim, also one of the co-drivers. Andy, good to see you.
Good to see you, man.
It's been a minute.
It's been a minute. Yes, sir.
Yeah. I got to tell you, man, this is a lot of fun. I feel really lucky that we all are here together, as busy as everybody is and as many directions as life has taken all of us. But what we're going to try to do as best as we can, and it'll be tough for me, so I imagine it'll be tough for all of us to recall a lot of the details around all the experiences that went into that. We'll definitely talk about the race itself, but there was a build-up, some preparation, some testing at Sebring, and a lot of different conversations that y'all had with Dad that I probably wasn't privy to. Back in 2001, I was young and not paying much attention to the details and just trying to have a lot of fun. And Dad was really, really focused on this effort and wanted it to go well, and certainly at a point in his life where he was a detailed kind of guy, and you guys got to experience that. But first off, I will say this, Doug, I was kind of surprised that Dad wanted to do this. I had been around him for years, never really heard him express interest in anything other than winning races at the Cup level and being a Cup champion. I hadn't had him. I mean, I knew he watched other forms of motorsport from time to time, but not. I mean, he was usually racing on a Sunday, and I never really heard him talk about, man, that'd be cool to try this or cool to try that. So when do you recall, I guess, the initial conversations?
Well, really, from my perspective, it all began with Andy. Andy, we'd been down at Petit Le Mans running a race. It was late in the race, couple laps left. Andy pulls off a miraculous pass on the Viper. We bring home victory. I mean, it was a really cool deal. It's late at night. Everybody's tired. I mean, it was just, well, your dad was watching the race, apparently, and got in contact with Andy. I think he either called or wrote a letter.
Yeah, it was actually, Doug, he saw the pass on RPM Tonight. RPM Tonight. Yeah. It was like the pass of the week on RPM Tonight. I think that's where he saw it. And then just to sort of continue on, there was a letter that came about 2 days after Petit Le Mans, and I sent you a copy there, actually, yeah. And it was...
What's the letter say?
So, I can just read it. It's real short. It was pretty funny. So, but first of all, I'm sitting at home. I know who Dale Earnhardt is. Of course I know who Dale Earnhardt is. But this thing came, and honestly, there was an envelope, and it had the Dale logo on it, the Earnhardt logo. And I thought, it might be a catalog or something, racing catalog. So I pull this letter out, and then I'm looking at it, and it basically says, Andy, I just wanted to drop you a line and congratulate you on your victory at the Petit Le Mans Road Atlanta. That sort of drive and determination is exactly why I want you for a teammate in the 24 Hours of Daytona. That last lap pass looked like something we do at Bristol. If I can adapt to these high downforce Corvettes like you've adapted to rubbing fenders, we should be able to skin some snakes come February. Snakes meaning the Vipers with the Cap Chrysler cars. That's what it was. Yeah. And it says, best wishes, look forward to seeing you here on October 17th. And that letter was October 2nd. Well, thank goodness there was no internet. Thank goodness I didn't tell the world, because I called Gary Claudio, like you were saying. Yeah. And Gary...
Who's he?
And Gary was basically, Doug can tell you more about Gary, but he basically said, he was our team manager, if you like. And he just said, don't breathe a word to anybody. Well, thank goodness he was the first call I made. So that just brings it to where it came from. Go ahead, Go.
Well, Gary Claudio, who was a marketing genius. He truly is. I mean, he's an amazing guy. And he was with Pontiac in NASCAR. And so he knew Crisp, and how that family thing works across brands. And so he went to work after this, came to me and said, what do you think about having Senior and Junior drive for us at Daytona? I said, are you kidding me? I said, you think you can make that happen? He goes, I don't know, but I'm certainly going to try. He knew that obviously that Andy had been in touch, and they had that Dad had very, very high interest in doing it. And so we kind of put it together. Well, we put it together early, all right, but your dad, two things occurred. He had to have neck surgery. I think it was neck surgery that he had scheduled. So he wasn't going to be able to do it that year. But the other thing was, I think that was going to be your first year in Cup. Yeah. You were moving up to Cup. Yep. And I think he knew that you watched sports car racing on TV. At least that's what he relayed to me. And he says, I don't want to get Junior exposed to the sports car racing before he gets his feet wet in Cup, because I don't want him steering off into sports cars. I want him focused on NASCAR. Huh. And so we delayed it for a year until we got to the 2001 time frame. And then the rest of it just kind of came together. It became really clear. We came down here, Claudio and I, and met with your dad.
What was that meeting like?
It was, it was really casual. It was in the shop. Got a tour. I had never been here before, and I don't think Gary had been.
A tour of DEI?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think Gary had been in the facility either, and it was. Awesome. I mean, that's a long time ago. Yeah. Seems like yesterday, but it was a long time ago.
It was brand new.
Oh my God, it was beautiful. Yeah. I mean, it was. I'd been racing all my life, and I had never seen anything like it. It was magnificent. We had lunch, cafeteria. I mean, it was.
The cafeteria was awesome.
Yeah, it was. It was a really cool deal. So, mutual excitement started to build at that point in time. And so I went back and then met with our team, with the Corvette team, explained to them what we were going to do. And I mean, it was just, if you could have seen the looks on their faces when I sat down and said, yeah, we're going to be having Dale Jr., Dale Sr. race with us at Daytona. I mean, they looked at each other like, are you kidding me?
There's always this, there had the second car, which out of the two cars, I mean, Ron Fellows is driving the other car. Who else was in the other car?
Chris Neifel, Johnny O with Johnny O's first race.
Yeah.
And I think Frank Freon.
Frank Freon, yeah.
And so who was in the second car besides you two?
So it was Frank Freon was our regular guy. And when it first came up, it was going to be when it was first introduced, when I first met you down there, it was 3 names were on the car, which is actually for, the collectible nerd types. If they see a yellow car that's clean with 3 names on it, that was because Kelly was at that point not part of the team, and it was only after we tested like at Sebring.
Well, I was supposed to be in the other car.
Stuff. Yeah, he was supposed to be in the other car.
In Ron's car.
Yeah, and it basically Kelly got added later, so the cars that at the end of the race, the collectibles all have 4 names on, and that's why, because at the very beginning, at the first announcement,
it was just you and
it was just you two and me. Yeah, exactly.
And we went to Sebring and tested.
Yeah.
And Dad wrecked the car and I wrecked the car. Yeah. And so they thought they needed to bring it in.
Well, your dad came up to me and he just nudged me right there in pit lane. And he goes, you want to drive with us in our car? And I go, it's not my decision. It's the doctor's, meaning Doug. And I know there's more to that story, but that's where I found out about it.
That's a great story.
So anyways, I said, you got to go. And he goes, you don't want to drive with me and my son? And I go, no, I didn't say that, Dale. I just said, I can't make that decision. And 3-4 minutes later, he came back over and he says, we're teammates now. That was it.
It's awesome.
And he went and talked to
it
him.
was.
But there's more to it.
Yeah, the reality was we had discussed inter-team wise what we're going to do, and I thought it would be a great idea that we have 4 drivers in the car. Normally we only have 3.
Right.
But in your car, there was going to be you, your dad, and Andy and Kelly. And we only had 3 drivers listed for the other car at that point in time. And so your dad came down. We were at Sebring at that Sebring test, which was interesting.
That was a great day.
It was very
That was
interesting.
a funny day.
I got to tell you, we're going to diverge here a little bit.
Yeah.
Because Junior got in the car first, all right, and he goes right to the pedal. I mean, he's full throttle and right out of the chute. I mean, there was no acclimation time. And
I had no idea.
No, you did, but I mean, it
Yeah.
was gung ho, baby.
Yeah.
It was video game time. And ended up
Backing it into the bridge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was a morning. No big deal. All
Yeah.
right. Nothing we hadn't expected.
Yeah. So, so we get there, and what I would eventually learn is that when we in the Cup car or any other race car I ever drove at that point, you get out on the racetrack and the first lap's the best lap grip wise,
Right.
and it falls off from there. In your car, the tires have kind of a case on them that you got to take it really careful for a while. Like at Daytona, it was about a lap and a half before you really kind of could start to laterally load the tire. I had no idea. I go off pit road, first series of corners, and then stand on the gas headed to the bridge, and it just turned backwards and slid forever. And I back it into the bridge and destroyed this car. The back of the car is destroyed. And I'm thinking, we've been here 15 minutes, and I've
Test over.
killed this thing. Yeah. And so we roll it back into the garage, and I'm standing there, and I'm embarrassed. I'm embarrassed for Dad because I've wrecked the car. And your team had no emotion. They go into they always just went to work. Like, all right, we've been here before. So they go into the truck and they bring out these gigantic black bags, like huge body bags is what they kind of look like, and unzip, and out comes a brand new car. Like the whole rear section of this car, they rebuilt the underbody and the top and the wing and all of the whole comes out of these giant bags. And in 15 minutes, the car was back together. And then they're like, okay, get back in. I was like, really? I'm not like in the penalty box.
You didn't get banned.
I'm not in timeout. And they're like, go for it again. Just, now you know.
So we follow up, and he does an admirable job. He
did a good job. We were watching lap times.
Yeah.
You got there really quick, man.
Then Dad gets in the car. All right, now he's taking the opposite approach. He's walking down the hill to get to the cows. There's a story goes with that. It's old timers joke. Anyway, and he's lap times are coming down. You can tell he's getting acclimated. He's getting way more comfortable. The next thing you hear coming down the straightaway, going into 17. Things is just locked up, called boom into the tire wall. He had all 4 tires on the car were flat.
He backed it in.
Because he had locked them up for such a long period of time going in that corner, and the car was a mess. So now we got to bring it back in. And of course, he's after the earlier episode with you, all right, he's, oh, Doug, I'm so sorry, So we're sitting down, we're having lunch while the guys are fixing the car, and we just had, making sandwiches and stuff. We're sitting at the table, and he goes, Doug, I says, I can't tell you how sorry I am causing you guys all this work and doing all this damage. And I said, don't worry about it. I said, you only got one responsibility left. He says, well, what's that? I said, well, you see that pile of parts over there? He goes, yeah. I said, after lunch, you and Junior are going to go over and sign all those. I said, I'm going to sell them. I said, I'm going to get my money back for all the damage on the car. And lo and behold, true to the man. All right, you guys both went over with a Sharpie and signed all the broken parts.
Carbon.
Yeah. We did sell some of them, but we always contacted you before we would do it.
Really?
I don't know if you remember any of that, to make sure that you knew we were going to do it. We didn't do it all at once. Every once in a while,
but that incident when he did crash, he could only get reverse. So we were going to go out and get him. Do you remember that?
Yes, he backed the
and
car
he backed
down
it all the way down Sebring, and all you could see is his eyes and his mustache in the side mirror. and he didn't want any help, and he drove it all, and the wheels were like this, and he drove it, and he got out, and he was really bummed.
Yeah.
So
I was not bummed. Now I was sad for the guys that had to fix the car, but I was like, hell yes. Just, I didn't want to be the only guy to freaking wreck this thing.
Thank God.
You want
It was going to be an easier ride home.
you want some more ammunition for that? Okay, so at the beginning of the day, he said, can someone take me around? I said, yeah, I had a Corvette C5 that GM were providing for me. So I took him around the racetrack just to show him around. This is before all this happened, right? So I took him around kind of steady, just like here, pointing apex so I could talk, and all right. Then I came back on pit lane. He says, now it's my turn. And I said, oh, yeah, sure. So I stopped the car, he gets in. He just bang, 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 bang down to turn one. And I, oh my God, this is going to be crazy. So he got around the track and he was flying around the track, just figuring it out, getting the wrong line, figuring it, pulling it back, going sideways, everything else. And he made it. He comes down the back straightaway, fourth gear, flying into 17, and basically gets into the corner, realizes he's got to slow it down, slams it into third, first.
Oh, whoa.
And round, and I saw bridge, wall, bridge, wall, bridge, wall. Okay, we must have spun like 3 times.
Damn.
And then it finally stopped, and your dad was smile on his face, and he looked at me and goes, you a nervous Nelly yet, boy? And I was like, no, I'm fine.
Yeah.
And he said, that's not what your right foot's telling me. I had my foot blasted to the firewall.
You were at foot on the brake, baby.
The car was never the same. I had to drive it back home. It was like, I mean, I think the drive shaft had was at a U-bend in it, man.
Damn.
So there you go. You got that.
I remember, I feel like for some reason we had a dinner, like that was a 2-day test, or we had dinner before we left.
Yeah.
And I remember, we'd wrecked a car. Both of us had wrecked a car, but we'd also run some really solid times, and
You did.
Y'all were. That was important because I think we wanted to go and run well, right, in Daytona, right. And so I think I was like, I just remember being at that dinner and listening to y'all. I was listening to y'all talk to Dad, and Dad talk to y'all, and judging the temperature of the conversation.
Well, if you remember, he said, we're all going to dinner.
Yeah.
Leave your cars at the track. We were back with you guys.
Yeah.
With Crisp and Ty. Yep.
And I just remember that being a lot of, I felt really good after that dinner because it was like camaraderie. We all kind of got the bond a little bit. And there was some, I guess, some confidence of, that we could go there and be capable of doing well. So, Sebring, that's a fun story for me to tell because, wrecking that car and feeling like, holy shit, what have I done? I've ruined this whole thing. The whole thing's ruined. And then the rest of the day going the way it did, and us in there.
We wanted to get that done out of the way.
Yeah,
that's how you build the family. I mean, when we looked at what we did for a team, and you got to experience a lot of it, because there's a bunch of stories, I think, that relate to that. But the idea was, and these guys were part of it, being a Corvette race car driver is not just driving the car. Your role outside the car is as important as your role inside the car. And when we developed that family, I mean, we knew the crew guys, all right? We knew their family. We knew their girlfriends, their wives, their dog. I mean, we knew all about them. We were one group that had bonded together. And I think your dad recognized that right away. And I think he didn't know quite how to do that. He oftentimes explained to me that he didn't fully understand how this thing worked like this, where everybody was together and friendly and
helping one another.
The inter-team stuff that went on. Yeah. I mean, there was a genuine love of the sport. It was a different environment. And I think getting that Sebring test was so important, and you hit the nail right on the head, is going through as difficult time as it could be. I mean, there's nothing worse than wrecking a car. All right. Well, we got that out of the way because that never happened again.
Yeah.
All right. We went through all the stuff. We're talking about selecting the teams. Your dad came up to me when we put that four driver thing together, and he was not happy. All right. He said, Doug, I have to tell you, I'm a little disappointed. I said, well, what? He says, well, I want to know why there's 4 drivers in our car and there's only 3 drivers in all the other cars.
Yeah.
I said, well, Dale, this is your first stay at 24 hours.
Yep.
I said, we've got weather to think about. I said, we've got heat to think about. I said, it takes a lot out of you driving these cars. He said, Doug, I drive in the Charlotte World 600. I ride in that whole damn race all by myself. I said, Dale, I said, I don't want to take away from that. I said, I know that's a monumental physical achievement. But I said, driving sports cars, you're shifting gears, you're turning left, you're turning right, you're mashing on the brake, you're racing with cars that are significantly faster, you're racing with cars that are significantly slower. I said, it's tough. He said, and I could tell that I was not getting through to him. I mean, it wasn't registering.
Yeah.
And so I said, look, I said, I appreciate and respect where you're coming from. I said, we got our test scheduled at Daytona. I said, we'll go down and do that Daytona test. And I said, when that test is over with, if you think that the 4-driver idea is a bad idea, then we'll go to 3 drivers. I said, I'll honor your request and we'll do that.
Yeah.
But let's get through that test. He said, all right, that sounds fair. So we go down to Daytona. You remember this, and it was hotter than hell. It had to be. It was early in the year. It's January, but it was like 95 degrees outside. And so his time comes to get in the car. It's morning. It's probably 10:30 in the morning. So he suits up. He wear that open face helmet, gets in the car. He's out. The car would run about 50 or 55 minutes on a tank of fuel. And so he was going to do a full stint. At about the 40-minute mark, we got something on the telemetry that suggested something was going south in the car, and there was no sense in having it blow up or have something break, whatever's going wrong. I don't remember what it was. So we call him in, 40 minutes in the car. Well, he pulls in, he's in the car, and I can see he's been working inside the car. So he gets out, and he's flushed, sweating, helmet off, cool rag around his neck, bottle of water. He comes over, and I'm sitting on the wall. He sits right down next to me, all right? I'm looking over. I don't say anything. He doesn't say anything. 2 or 3 minutes go by, and I feel elbow. Doug? I said, yes. He said, you know that idea you had about 4 drivers in the car? I said, yeah. He said, I think it's a damn fine idea. He says, and I got to get my ass back in the gym.
Yeah.
I said, you got it, Dale. I mean, I didn't elaborate on it, but it was that he had the awakening about the physical expenditure required to drive those things, even on a track that he was totally familiar with. Mm-hmm. It was kind of cool to see him acquiesce and understand what we were doing. I think it gave him a new respect for everything that we did and the knowledge that we were bringing with us. And how much he had to learn. Yeah. He was always open to learning.
What do you guys remember from the tests?
Oh, boy, I remember a lot. I remember him driving backwards down the pit lane. I remember him...
the test at Daytona.
Oh, no, I wasn't at the test
You weren't at the Daytona test?
I was at Sebring because I was in Ron's car up until your dad nudged me.
Yeah.
And then he says, what, you don't want to drive with me? I'm like, I didn't say that. But anyways, that's when I got put in the car that day.
Really?
At Sebring, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I was supposed to be in Ron's car. And but I remember him driving down there like that. I remember him being very fascinated that Andy and I would help you guys out. He'd never shared information with other drivers. I mean, that's secret, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, you're just telling us what you're doing and where you're braking. And he's like, that was part of that whole bonding thing that whole day before we went to dinner. Yeah. It was a lot of fun. I remember I think you got a backshift, and you came into the pits, and you got out of the car, and he said to you, he goes, "What'd you do to the car?" And you go, "Nothing." He goes, "Did something because she's bleeding, and there was some oil coming out of the bottom of the car." Do you remember that? Yeah. Yeah, he was a little rough on you that day. He was like, he was like, "What are you doing here?" Yeah, and then he went and crashed the car. So then you were that, like you said, you're like, lucky.
Oh yeah. Do y'all remember? I remember him being very adamant to be included in all aspects of the experience. That everything that you guys were required to be at or do, or any meeting that might be taking place, no matter how minimal.
He wanted to be in everything.
Yeah,
yeah. He really liked. He was gung ho about this thing.
Yeah,
like he was excited for sure.
Yeah,
about the whole experience and doing good.
Yeah. I remember him. We were. I don't know if it was privately, but I remember us being. Well, I was being competitive with him about our times, and I remember needling him a little bit, and he's like, it's not time to race yet, and this is a 24-hour race. It ain't about the fastest. And I was poking at him. He would not like show any. He would not like play along with me or get worked up in the.
He didn't take the bait.
He wasn't taking the bait.
No. So I don't really. I wish I had the sheets in front of me, but I felt like at Sebring, I was quicker, even though I probably beat the car up worse than he did. And then in the testing at Daytona, I was a little bit quicker than he was.
Yep.
And I'm like, dude, what is going on?
Yeah.
And he's like, it's not race time yet. It's not race time yet. And I'm like, okay.
Your dad and I spoke a little bit about some of that stuff, and I think something that may have helped him a little bit, you can probably tell me if it did or didn't, but I said the braking. The braking was the biggest thing that he kept saying, the braking, and his braking points were just too early. And I said, he was braking almost like at the 4 marker, and we were braking like just past the 2 marker.
Yeah.
And I said, give me half of it. He said, well, I don't know about that. And I said, give me half.
Yeah.
And he got down to the 3, and immediately his time started to come down.
Yeah.
And he came out of the car and said, the brakes. He said, the steering, the handling, the acceleration, but the braking, he said, is something that physically was different. You may feel the same way.
I remember
don't know.
that was the first. Yeah. That was the very first time I'd ever been able to use telemetry and look at you and see what you guys were doing. Mm-hmm. And this is something that I took with me for the rest of my career. Driving that Corvette, honestly, helped me. Obviously, and it should have, but it helped me really understand why you brake. So there's guys that come out of whether it be V8 supercars or any type of discipline where you run road courses, just like you guys.
Yeah.
And you'll come drive our cars and your braking is so unique. We take what an oval driver does when they spend all their life driving around in circles, and then they go to a road course. We try to brake the same way. And so what I learned, we brake really gradually and almost feed more brake to the center of the corner, and you guys do it the opposite. And I'm like, and so that was one of the first things you guys told me was like, you got to match the brake pedal when the car is at max downforce. That's when the brakes are going to perform the best and the tires are going to do their job. And so like you almost flip the graph upside down. So the reason why you're able to go so deep into the braking zone is because you do all of your braking at once. And then you come off with the arrow. And so that was something that y'all steered me toward really early in the testing. And that was the most helpful piece of information for me to try to find the most gains. Yeah. Like I could feel lateral load felt the same no matter what kind of car you're driving. Balance, we all understand what that, but like the technical challenges of getting into the braking zone and getting the car slowed down and still turned on a road course with that much downforce working with you was really interesting.
I think your dad just picked up on that slower than you did. You picked it up quite quickly.
Well, I will be honest with you, man. It was because y'all were so great at sitting down, and right after we would drive the car, you would sit down and go, all right, you see here that the
debrief,
that
exactly.
was something we never did, right?
Yeah.
We didn't have that much data. We weren't sharing data. We weren't driving each other's cars.
Yeah.
So this is the first time, like all 4 of us in the same vehicle, and okay, I see it. You're braking way down here, and we way more brake initially and fading, and it's just so easy to go out and try to replicate that.
If you remember, you guys brought something to the table too.
Oh yeah,
I remember that.
Because like you're talking about that maybe remember that we go into the debrief room with the engineers. I call them Imagineers, but they would give us all our data and all that stuff. And Ron, they brought in everybody, not just us.
Yeah.
Everybody, Ron and everybody. And we were going through this whole thing with braking and everything. And they're like, so Dale, what are you doing here on the banking between when you come out of the chicane all the way to the braking zone and turn 1? And he goes, well, I just drive up here to this bump and I go that one, then I go to this one and another one over here and all that stuff. And well, we treat it like a straightaway, talk on the radio, just hold the wheel, go through the gears. And I think Dale was exiting the chicane bus stop like 7 miles an hour slower than us, and he was getting on the brakes 150 feet earlier, and his top speed was like 2 miles an hour faster, you as well, in the banking, because of your feel your natural. It was like the two worlds were colliding. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like 2 to 3 tenths every
Yes.
time from the exit of the bus stop to
Yeah.
the entry to turn
And
one.
he gained back, you guys
and
would
we,
gain on
you
us.
gained it. Yeah, you were killing us.
And he was all, his feathers were all, woohoo.
Yeah,
He loved that.
There were 4 or 5 loops at Daytona at that point in time,
Yeah.
and so
Yeah.
we could, we could look at those segmented times, and I think it got down to the point where it was quite clear that it was 2/10 of a second. We couldn't figure out where it was, and Johnny went out. Your dad went out, and Johnny said, "I'm gonna follow you," and so Johnny went out and learned the pathway.
Yeah.
Okay. And then came back and was able, again, to your point, share it with the rest of the guys. But it was like, it cut both ways. I mean, that
It did.
That
Yeah.
was 2/10 of a second
Yeah.
is a
Big.
big deal.
And I've
in
used
a
it
road
ever
race.
since.
Yeah.
I did like
you don't forget it.
I did a 14-hour race like a couple of months ago in a much slower car, and I used exactly the same thing, and I could gain some time, and you could feel it on the guys that I was driving with
Yeah.
on the same car. It was, and I told him, this is Dale Earnhardt. I learned this from the Dale Earnhardt.
Yeah.
I learned from both of them.
Yeah.
It was so funny. Yeah.
Hey everybody, it's Dale Jr. and I want to tell you about a great partner here at Dirty Mo Media, American Financing. When you're a homeowner, expenses can quickly rack up, but American Financing can help you save. American Financing customers save an average of $800 a month, so just think of what you could do with all those savings. American Financing is licensed in all 50 states, and they are a family-owned mortgage lender that's been around for 25 years. They offer real solutions to put you back in the driver's seat. Plus, American Financing consultants, they're salary-based, meaning they don't work off of commission, so you aren't dealing with pushy salespeople. And it starts with one call and just takes about 10 minutes to get started. There's no upfront fees, and it doesn't cost anything to find out how much you could save. You can be able to close in as fast as 10 days, and you also may be able to delay up to 2 mortgage payments by refinancing, creating more savings upfront when you need it. American Financing has helped hundreds of thousands of homeowners create meaningful savings, and it is reflected in their reviews on Google. Call today, 866-877-2322. That's 866-877-2322 or AmericanFinancing.net/Dale. What was the experience like watching us kind of prepare for an endurance race? I know that I know Dad was much older, and so probably understood a lot of the information you guys were giving him. I would learn, I think, after the fact that I didn't have to run 100% every corner, that it was, and it's different today, right? They go out today and run that race in qualifying speed all night, all day, all night. It's just crazy. But we had to really take care of the car, and that was like an entire process that I learned as the race went on. Mm-hmm. But I guess, how did y'all see Dad adapting to going from running 300 to 500 mile events all his life to trying to, how his mind worked to be able to help you guys get through this event?
After we did the test, I wrote quite a lot of stuff, and it was kind of interesting because I sent it to him and you, obviously, to both of you, because driver changes were a thing.
Yeah,
right.
Huge.
Taking care of the
time.
tires were a thing. Building up the tire at the beginning of his stint, things like that, positioning of the car in the pit stop, just all kinds of bits and pieces I thought might be useful to both of you. And I was going up to Pratt & Miller to just see, because our driver changes were really not well. So it was like, okay. So I was going to go up to Pratt & Miller by myself.
Elaborate on the driver change and why that was important.
Because the preparation, we had to do some modification inside the car, because Kelly and I we were so used to driver changes, but for people that weren't used to it, and we were slightly different sizes, but similar.
The sequence coming into the
sequence
pits,
and everything. Yeah, and it needed that going over. So I needed to go to Pratt & Miller to just verify, what can we do to move the belts? Can we fix a belt here? Can we help put that there? That's going to make it easier, because you're not doing it all the time. Mm-hmm. And the funny part was, after he got the stuff and he blah, 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 and he called me on the phone. We were just chatting, because he called me sometimes just to chat. And he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm just actually getting ready to go to the airport. I'm sort of getting my bag packed for tomorrow. I was going to go to the airport to go to Pratt & Miller." He said, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "Well, the notes I sent." You said, "Yeah, thanks for those, etc." And I said, "I just want to go physically to the car and see what we can maybe do, but we've got some time before the weekend." And he said, "Can I go?" He says, can I come? Literally, man. He said, can I come? And I'm going like, Dale, yes, of course. Whatever you want to do. Yeah, sure. And he says, okay, great. And it was almost this interest level, this enthusiasm was just, you could feel it in him. And he said, I want to go too. And he said, why don't you fly to Charlotte and we'll go up in the jet and we'll go together and we'll go there. And I said, that's it. And that's how that started. But it was just really detailing some of the things and some of the changes. And so he came, I went to Charlotte and we ended up going up there and spending the day at Pratt Miller. And it was just the enthusiasm was genuine. It was absolutely genuine.
I remember being more nervous about driver changes than driving the car.
That was why I did that.
Yeah,
that was it.
Are.
Yeah, of course.
And one of the things that I still use today, there's this just kind of like I would compare it to the type of material you'd use on a slingshot, but the bungee cord. You guys would bungee all of the belts. Mm-hmm. So when the belts are undone, they're just kind of out and hanging around. And so like literally the shoulder belts are hanging in the ceiling, and you just grab them and they come right, put them where you got to go. And I still use that for my lap belt on my left side because if not, it falls under my ass and I have to dig it out of there.
There you go.
But I remember us practicing those and thinking, we're not going to get good at this. This is just going to be something that's just not going to be good, not going to go well for us.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I remember we got to the racetrack for the race weekend, I believe. One of the first things we did, Dad texted me or called me and he's like, get over to the garage. We're going to practice drivers changes some more,
Yeah.
And so he was still, focused on like improving that particular aspect.
He became the big cheerleader for that stuff. Yeah. He did. He absolutely did. Yeah.
Well, it became abundantly clear when you break down a pit stop, when you look at all the things that can go south. All right. I mean, you're only putting fuel in the car, you're only putting tires on the car, and you're only doing a driver's change. Well, the biggest opportunity to screw up is in the driver change. And when it goes south in a driver change, it's not 1 or 2 seconds. It's 10 or 15 seconds. Yeah. And you just can't get that time back on the racetrack. Unless you get a yellow. I mean, there's no way to get that back, and that's why that driver change becomes so critically important. That's why we spend so much time on. We still do. I mean, we're looking at that stuff every single day, and I think your dad recognized that right away, and obviously it made an impact on you because that was your greatest concern. It wasn't driving the car; it was effectively implementing a driver change.
Well, he also had that learning curve. You guys might remember at night. He didn't want to do the night practice.
Yeah.
And he was worried about that. And we were like, just go out. You guys both go out. And he got really comfortable. And what I'm getting at is he had to learn how to manage traffic and work traffic and keep the lap time going. And when the session was over, we'd always told him, these aren't cup cars. They're all carbon fiber. You just mess up a wing plate or anything like that and you change your aero and everything.
Feel it.
And you might remember this. It was Crisp and Ty and Andy and me and you and a bunch of media, and he came in after the night practice checkered flag. He comes in and he's excited as hell. That was great. I loved it and everything. And our crew chief at the time, Frank Rezanetti, goes, hey, Dale, what'd you hit? And he goes, nothing. He goes, Dale goes back to talking, and then he goes, you must have hit something. He goes, I didn't hit anything. and then Frank says it one more time, and he goes, all right, Andy, and he looks over to Andy and goes, you'd be proud of me. I waited to turn him around to turn 3. He goes, he was blocking me on the banking. I waited to turn 3. And we just sort of were laughing, like biting our cheek because you can't do that in that car. But his way of moving traffic was to turn him around. And you'd be proud of me.
He spun a Porsche.
He spun
a Porsche.
Yeah, he spun the Porsche.
He waited till the slowest corner, though. He was pretty proud of that.
I was supposed to be proud of him for the fact that he didn't do it at 140 miles an hour somewhere. It was like,
I hit something, but I did it in the slowest corner.
Yeah.
That was hilarious.
Yeah, it was funny.
And I think you actually said, Dale, we can't do that. Just can't do that.
You just can't be doing that.
Yeah.
So, let's. Do you guys recall any more from the Daytona test or the test leading up to the race itself? We had hot weather, but nothing other.
Yeah, I can tell you this, and it gets back to the family sort of thing, because you guys had your coach right off the paddock lane there, and that's where you were staying, and so you have to move from the coach down to the garage area, and then to pit area, and just moving around. All right, and there were fans there for this test.
Yeah.
So they allowed fans to come, and we got done early in the day. Again, it was at lunchtime, and he said, "I can't believe what's going on here at the racetrack." And so I'm concerned. I said, "Well, what do you mean?" He says, "Well, he says, I'm just used to having to have security and getting mobbed by people." He says, "Junior and I can walk right around here, and it's just, it's really nice." He says, "Why does that happen?" I said, "Well, sports car people are just a different mentality. They know who you are. They certainly respect who you are, but they're not the type of people that are going to come up and mob you put something in your face to sign it and do all the rest of that." He really, I think, enjoyed the comfort level of being able to move around unencumbered.
Yeah.
That didn't become an element. I didn't have to worry about where my security team was. I didn't have to worry about how are we going to get back over there? Can I take the golf cart? I mean, none of that prevailed. It was a total different environment that he hadn't experienced in racing. And at the end of the race, when that whole thing was over, we had a long conversation about what his experience was, because he had never had in his entire career, he had never had a total experience like it was for that 24-hour event. I think that was one of the biggest takeaways for me, was that he had really remarked about how nice of an environment it was. It, quote unquote, "is the best time I've ever had racing." It was just that simple.
It's in this letter that he wrote. He wrote several of us letters after.
Yeah, I
Kelly
sent mine
got
to
one.
Bobby.
Yeah.
He's got it.
Yeah, Kelly got one. I got one. I think Doug may have got one too. I
Yeah.
think. Yeah, but it was like
The time
he
of your
says
guys'
it right
life.
in there. Yeah, he says basically. Yeah, he says something.
The funny thing is
there.
on the you're talking takeaways from like Daytona. Some of the little things that the Corvette team, the two big trailers, all the hospitality, the driver tables, right, all that stuff. And we go to get in line, and it's Ron and me and Johnny and him and you, and because the driver's supposed to eat first. I don't know why, but that's just the way rule it was. And all of a sudden, he comes and grabs me and Ron by the lapel on the race suit. Says, "What are you guys doing? Get over here." We're like, "What?" And he goes, "You don't eat first. The crew eats first. Your mechanics eat first. They're the ones that take care of your race car. They're eating first." And they're all looking at me like, like that. And I'm like, "Oh my God, this is going to have to go this way for the whole race." And so next thing I know, you and your dad and Andy and I are sitting on the ice chest between the transporters, cutting our food like this while all the mechanics are sitting at our tables. Yeah. He said, "They take care of your car. They get to do it." I was like, "All right, whatever you say, Dale." That's funny.
Yeah.
We get ready for the race weekend. I mean, I'm racking my brain about things that stand out. I don't remember much about practice. I guess that means it was rather uneventful. I think I felt reasonable about how I was doing in the car. I was maybe 3/4 to a second off of you guys, and I was pretty happy with that. And I felt like we were going to be okay. I didn't really know what to expect in terms of how well we might run, and I had never, of course, Dad or I had never really raced in the race before, and didn't know what we were up for. And my approach to it was different than Dad's. I was there. I was having a good time, and I wasn't feeling a ton of pressure, but Dad's approach was different. He wanted to be everywhere y'all guys were at. If you guys were out on the pit road or if you guys were at a meeting, he wanted to be there. And I wanted to be where I was supposed to be, but I wasn't as eagerly seeking out the itinerary of the day as Dad was. And I've told this story before, but on race day, it's I know that the race is going to start, and one of y'all is going to be in the car. We're going to take off running, and at some point, they're going to say, "All right, it's your turn, it's your turn, it's your turn." And so, and I really have no clue, like what that feels like, or how ready to be, or what is the other guy supposed to be doing, right? And so I was really, I was kind of anxious, honestly, nervous about like when they were going to call my name and
That's normal.
what the experience was. Yeah, like I was going to climb in this car and go. It was really foreign. But I'm standing, and Steve Crisp, you mentioned Crisp. Steve Crisp is kind of like the, for the people listening, he's kind of like he works for Dale Earnhardt Incorporated. He's kind of a guy that would go around to the racetracks with me and make sure that I was where I was supposed to be at all times. And a great friend of Dad's, worked with Chevrolet forever. And he was basically the one that was tasked to sort of make sure me and Dad were where we were supposed to be, and a good kind of an insulator or connector to the race team. And he was pretty smart about road racing and Chevrolet in general and the Corvette program. So he's a good person to have. But he spent a lot of time with me, a ton of time with me that particular day, and we were in my bus. And, man, we had these cool helmets, right?
Your dad had our helmets painted.
Right.
Those are
So
cool.
Dad had a open face helmet, and I have got a closed face helmet. And I'm putting stickers all over my helmet, all this goofy shit I'd found. I don't know what it was. But so we were having fun with our helmets, and we had this drink hose that plugged into the front, which we'd never had before. Dad didn't use it. I don't know what Dad used because he had an open face helmet.
I think he did use a water bottle.
He just used a water
He puts
bottle.
it in the
But
door.
I connected to a system that had a button on the steering wheel like you guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Dad didn't really know. I'm embarrassed about this. And y'all probably heard this story before because I've told it a few times. But I was a closet cigarette smoker back then. And I didn't smoke around Dad, didn't smoke in public. And me and Steve smoked as well. So me and Steve Chris was
I caught you one time.
yeah, me and Steve Chris would sit there and bullshit smoke cigarettes. And I was nervous energy, being a goofball. It was about time to go out to the pit road for the pre-race ceremony. And Dad was coming by to get us. And Steve told me, he's like, your Dad's going to be here in a minute, tell us to come on. But I didn't think he's coming to the door of the bus, right, to get me. And that was out of character for Dad. He would probably pull up on the golf cart and lay on the horn and holler, come on. And I saw that helmet sitting on the counter, and we had like a backup helmet. And so I grabbed that helmet, and I put it on. I put one of them cigarettes in that little plug for the drink.
For the drink bottle?
And I was like, take a picture, Steve. It was just funny. And I'm standing, the bus I had a door in the center, and I'm standing right in front of that door, and that thing opened up, and it was Dad, and he slammed it shut. And I looked at Steve Chris. I said, man, I am in deep. This is like 15 minutes before we come out and took pictures with y'all on pit road. And pit road is slammed full of people. I mean, this is the race.
It was
race
packed.
is about to
Yeah.
start.
It was packed.
Fan walk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And me and Steve Chris sheepishly walk out of the bus. Dad's on the cart. Somebody else is driving it. Me and Steve climb on the back seat and sit down, and we start pulling away out of the bus lot. We're driving toward pit road.
You're just waiting.
I'm just sitting there, and Steve Chris starts snickering. And Dad turns around and goes, don't encourage him. Cussing at Steve. And I was like, God, he is pissed. Damn, man, I am messed up, because this is like a big deal. Dad's like, get your head in the game, you this is serious. And I'm like, I'm fine. Yeah, I'm all right. I'm just having fun. And he was so mad. Wouldn't even talk to me the rest of the morning. We go all the way out to pit road. And in all the photos, there was one where they're like, get on up there, take your picture. But like, we walk out there, he goes over, says hey to you guys, and I'm like 5 feet behind him.
Yeah.
And that was why.
Didn't know that.
He was
so funny.
mad. And so, yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
No,
I
I
had
did not
never
know that
heard that
either.
story, man.
Yeah.
That's
He was
classic.
so angry with me.
Well, that's
classic.
Yeah, go ahead, because he harped somebody to leaning over the front of the car to do an autograph, and he yelled at him, get off that car.
Yeah.
He harped. I was like, whoa.
I set him off in a bad mood.
So I want to know where the picture is.
I don't even know. I've never. Yeah,
That's got to be
I don't think
hilarious.
we got it taken. I think as soon as I stuck it in there, I was like, "Hey man, take a picture." It's like, door opens up. I'm like, "Oh, like, oh no!" And he knew I smoke. He walked in the house one time, saw an ashtray full of cigarettes, but I just would always not do it around him. He didn't approve of that kind of thing, and he knew I wanted to be a race car driver and needed to be in good shape. But I mean, it was a scene. But so we go out to. That was another thing I think that was pretty fun, and I didn't know what to expect or where to really be, but the pre-race going out there.
Yeah.
There's a moment of recognition to the team, the driver lineup. Everybody, gets this again doesn't happen. Isn't something we experience in NASCAR. A driver walks out to the car. We go through the intros and all of the stuff. You get to the car and you're just like, you would climb in right then if you didn't have to stand there for the anthem or prayer or whatever may be going on. You would just get in because you're just ready to get in and get away from the world, right? Yeah. But in y'all's, there's a ceremony is sort of, all right, everybody get together. Let's enjoy what we're about to do and let's recognize what we're about to, because it is a journey. That race is such
and the crew's there at the back of the car.
Everything's clean.
Everybody's there.
Perfect.
Clean.
Yeah.
And the build up to the prep to it is sort of recognized in that initial moment before the engines are fired. What do you guys remember about that morning?
I'm going to go to the
people. The number of people around our car
different?
because of you guys.
Oh,
yeah,
but your dad knows
every.
He knows almost every fan. He knows them. He'll tell us stories all about them.
Yeah.
The night before, again, this gets back to Claudio and his genius. I don't know if you remember this or not, but you guys will remember this. We used to do that little ceremony where the crew guys would roast the drivers.
I know.
Yeah.
We did that before each
I don't
race.
remember that.
All right. So we're at Daytona, and it's Friday night.
Where are we?
We're at the back of the transporters.
Oh,
all
the
right,
shirts.
in a group,
Shirts.
and the drivers, you get this. The drivers are lined up.
Yeah.
And so Claudio and I are making our pre-race speech. I'm giving him the pep talk, and he's screwing around as he usually did. Well, we had made up in this event. We had made up T-shirts for everybody.
Oh yeah.
And they had nicknames on them. Claudio would think up nicknames for people. I don't remember what your guys were. His was Grandma. I forget what yours was.
Yeah, mine was Grandma. Yeah.
Johnny was Little Red Riding Hood or something like that. So we get to you, and I'm trying to be sensitive this whole experience because I knew it was going to be tough operating in the shadow of your dad.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, that was just. I knew that was going to be hard, and I knew it was going to be difficult to bring you forward, to get you into the family, to get you into the pack. I wanted to try to make you feel as comfortable as I could, and the team as well. And so we get down to you and your dad. So your dad gets his T-shirt, all right, and it's a giant capital letter E on the T-shirt. And that, of course, everybody's laughing. That's pretty cool. And he's smiling. That's pretty cool. And then your T-shirt comes, and it's a little lowercase e. All right, and I'm thinking, this isn't. This is not. This is not helping. Okay, this is not helping Junior feel part of this thing. Yeah. Dad get the big E, and you get the little lowercase e.
Yeah.
So I mean, I kind of everybody's laughing. And you were a good sport about it.
Yeah.
Outwardly, there didn't seem to be anything, but it stuck in my mind. It was one of those moments where I felt bad.
Yeah.
I really felt bad.
You shouldn't.
Until the following week.
Yeah.
All right. Now, I don't know if you remember this. I'm watching the NASCAR. I'm watching the Daytona race. All right. And they're walking around pit lane. It was for qualifying or practice or something. And you're walking around with your fire suit on, and you had it tied around your waist. And you were wearing the little E T-shirt underneath it. I'm watching that TV, and I'm thinking, you know what? Suddenly I felt just a whole lot better about it. I thought it was just one of those moments in time, where things come together that only inside people would understand what that meant. And if that was clearly important to you, that you were wearing that shirt during the Daytona race.
He, back before we ran this race in 2001, I was working on my late model car in the Deerhead shop on the farm. This is probably about 3 years before this. Yeah. And he would walk around with this black hat with this capital E on it. And, Dad, that was strange to me because Dad never I always felt like, Dad had a persona. He was, the Intimidator, Man in Black, all these different things. And he taught, he leaned into all of that stuff. Absolutely. But he wasn't the kind of guy that would walk around with his name on his belt. Mm-hmm. He wasn't the kind of guy that would walk around with his hat on, like Dale Earnhardt hat. But he had somebody somewhere gave him one of these hats, and he comes walking in, and we roasted him. Me and a buddy of mine that was working there were like, what are you doing with that hat, that E? Big E hat on, man. What is this big ego? What does this hat mean? What does that E stand for? And we just gave him such a hard time. So like, fast forward to that T-shirt. Like when I saw that, I was like, oh man, this is perfect. I love this.
It couldn't get any better.
That's right. Yeah, because it's
Well, he was a character.
Yeah.
I mean, he remember one time he told us that he, like 11 o'clock at night, every once in a while he'd put on some ratty clothes and go down to Walmart and push a shopping cart around with like 10 rolls of paper towels in it, and just walk by people, and I was like that. He just for shock value.
No kidding.
Yeah,
I'd
goofy.
never heard that. Yeah, that is wild. You know that feeling you get when you're watching drivers fight it out on the racetrack, giving it everything they've got for the checkered flag? Well, you can capture that feeling forever with cars from Lionel Racing, the official diecast of NASCAR. The ultimate way to celebrate the biggest moments in racing. These diecasts aren't toys, they're authentic, high-quality replicas of your favorite rides from the sport's biggest stars, including myself and the guys on my race team. Whether you're a longtime collector or a fan who's new to the sport, Lionel Racing diecasts bring the heart of racing to your shelf or man cave with incredible detail. They're built with precision, with all the exact decals, logos, and paint schemes you've seen on the actual cars. And trust me, these cars make you feel like you're right there in the middle of it. So head to LionelRacing.com, your favorite racing team shop, or any authorized retailer, and start building your collection today. And don't forget, you can find a wide selection of diecasts at the Lionel stores in Concord Mills near Charlotte Motor Speedway and Opry Mills in Nashville. Yeah, I guess we can dive into the race. I see a lot of footage when this race comes around every year. We see, we see the footage of Dad driving the car around, the in-car footage of him in there driving it. I will say that I thought that was the best driving race car that I'd ever been behind the wheel of, and even today, the amount of once you got the tires worked in pretty good.
Yeah.
The way that car wanted to be driven and begged to be driven was so much fun. And I was a bit unsure about how comfortable I would be driving something with that much, power and technology. But it did everything better. Everything that my NASCAR stuff did, this thing just did everything better. And I remember Dad talking about that as well, just how fun it was to drive. We got some opportunity to race in the rain, which was a blast.
Yeah.
That was a little baptism by fire for you.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
That was.
But I had
difficult.
some good information. You guys were like, hey, man, you don't want to run it online.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I understand.
Yeah.
I was not sure exactly. I was like, so in my mind, you guys are like, all right, don't run in the groove because it's got oil and all kinds of shit all over. Don't run off line. I'm like, but I got to cross the line somewhere, right?
That's
I got
right.
to get from one side of the track
right.
to the other. Like, how do I do that? And it's very carefully.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
That's
short
right.
shift.
You got to cross the line twice, on the way in and on the way out.
That's right. So
yeah.
I remember I was like, I couldn't believe y'all put me in that car at night and during the rain. But I think the nighttime was probably my best time because I was always wanted to stay up late.
And it was hard to get the tires up too.
Yeah.
It's hard, even harder to get the tires up because of the cold weather.
Yeah.
Well,
for sure.
Senior kind of like, I don't know if you guys remember this.
Oh, yeah.
Because he was scheduled to do 2 stints.
Yeah.
And it wasn't raining, but it was misting and the track was wet.
Yeah.
All right. But he came on the radio, because we're checking all the time. How you doing? Are you comfortable? Yep. Everything's fine. As it progressed and he gets deeper into his second stint, he comes on the radio and says, guys, I'm really enjoying this.
Yeah.
Because he says the car's handling kind of like a NASCAR now.
Yeah.
All right?
He was moving around
because it was moving around. He could feel that on the banking.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
He got near the end of the second stint, and he says, "Guys, I want to ask you something." I said, "What's that?" He said, "Can I stay in for a third stint?" Do you remember this?
I thought it was a second stint.
It was the third. He did.
Not 3 in a row. He did one, and then he
He wanted to stay in again.
So it would be a total of 3.
Yes.
Yeah.
And everybody kind of looked at each other, And, when a guy's comfortable in the car and he's turning great lap times in the wet,
Yep.
I mean, you don't want to break that rhythm.
No.
And if he's physically feeling it, I mean, he said, yeah, well, go ahead. I mean, number one, he was liking it, but number two, he really liked it that we said, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Because I think it made him feel like, you know what, they know I'm doing a good job in this car.
Yeah.
We're not giving up anything by having me in here.
Yeah.
I mean, it was one of those moments.
And when it started raining, I mean, it started raining when he just about got in for his first stint. Mm-hmm. And then I actually was on the radio and told him just a little bit about what we were saying. Like, watch the line, you go offline here, be careful coming out of the bus stop because it's really slippery coming back out of the bus stop. Yeah. And that was all he needed. And then he just got going quicker and quicker and quicker and getting more and more comfortable.
Yeah.
I felt like the rain tire had more grip.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. It was just amazingly grippy.
You couldn't run obviously anywhere near the lap time, but the lateral, and it was just easier to understand.
Felt good.
Your comfort level in the car was good.
Yeah.
You didn't feel like you were giving anything up.
No, not really.
No.
I felt like I was more competitive when the track was wet than versus the dry track.
Yeah.
Like when we ran, when the track would get dry, you guys were like elite,
Yeah.
and it was, that would be, the delta would be a little larger. Talking about the tires, getting them up to, getting the heat in them and so forth. I don't remember Dad having really any moments. I wasn't always uber paying attention to exactly what was going on with him in the car. But I remember two things that happened to me during the race. I'm sure there was more, but and it was fun because it was the middle of the night, and I'd came in, changed tires, or I just got in the car. I don't know, but I went out on new tires, and we had a pit limiter, and gingerly kind of drive the car around to pit exit and go into the first
horseshoe
there in the infield. And I got on the gas coming out of the horseshoe and spun into the grass and took down a couple of those billboards, the little white billboards.
Braking markers.
Yes. Yeah. And man, I'm spun around. It's like 2 a.m. Feels like it's pretty much. I'm not quite sure how much you guys are paying attention. I'm like, man, I wonder if
we were paying attention.
I wonder if they know where I'm at. And I really don't know which way to go to get back onto the track. I'm like, I don't want to get course cutting or anything like that. I'm like, I've done spun around like 3 or 4 360s, and I just want to rejoin in the right place. But there's cars I'm a good 50 yards from the racetrack at this point.
Yeah.
And there's brake lights and headlights flying all around in the distance, and I'm like, I'm just not sure where to go. And I don't even remember rejoining the racetrack, but I got back going again and run some laps, and then somewhere along the line, it felt like it might have been later that morning. There was, with the weather, we had massive ruts in the bus stop.
Yeah.
And so right offline, there were like, foot deep, 10, 12 inches deep, big ruts. And I dropped a tire on the bus stop and broke the drive shaft.
But we didn't know that.
I came to pit road.
Yeah.
And I was like, there's a problem with the drive line. Come down pit road. And they're like, what was that thing called back then?
Half shaft.
Half shaft.
Yeah,
Yes,
half
half
shaft.
shaft.
Yeah.
You're like, we got a broken half shaft. And I was like, And
I thought they thought it was a transmission.
No.
And they replaced the transmission. And it ended up being the half shaft when you tried to leave.
yeah.
Yeah.
It was.
We would have won that race. They didn't look at the half shafts. You said something feels wrong in the drive.
Yeah.
They replaced the whole transmission.
Oh,
They replaced a perfectly good transmission, told you to go, and then Roscoe goes, it's the half shaft.
Oh.
They could have done. We might have won that race, dude.
Oh.
I mean,
Well,
nothing because of you. Just,
I know. Well, I felt like
Yeah.
and sorry, Andy, but Andy dropped a tire in the bus stop like hours later and broke another half shaft.
I don't remember that.
I do.
Well, then I did. Then I did. Then I did.
Anything he does wrong, he doesn't remember.
I blocked those things out of my mind, obviously. Yeah.
He's English, Dale.
Yeah.
He's English.
There's a reason we carried more than one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There were some massive holes in the bus stop.
Huge. Huge.
I remember.
Huge.
Well, do you
There
remember what
was
happened
big.
to me? I got my fuel light coming out of the bus stop, and the engineers, they go, you can go another lap. I go, you sure? And they're like, yeah. So I'm like, I'm a driver, not a thinker, right? And I'm driving around. All of a sudden, I'm coming to the bus stop on the backside, and it starts running out of gas, like running out of gas. And I'm like, I'm going out of gas. And I blew the bus stop. I went all the way around, and it's raining.
Yep.
And I couldn't make it to pit lane. And I'm on the back with racing shoes, pushing with my back against the wing, trying to get it in. And I finally got it close enough to where the team could come out and get me and push me in.
remember that.
You remember that?
Yeah, I remember that
and I
too,
remember
yeah.
telling your dad, he goes, man, you're out of breath. And I go, you know, it's a
How
locked
far
rear
did you
end.
have to push it?
Like probably 80, 100 yards.
Oh, yeah.
It's all on film.
Yeah.
And I get in there and he goes, how you doing? I'm like, I'm beat, man. And he goes, well, thank God you did that. And I go, thank God. I go, all I could think about was if I was the guy that ran your race car out of gas, I'm not going to make it out through the tunnel on this racetrack. And he goes, that's true. They would have got you. That's what he said. Yeah, that was crazy.
Unreal.
You know, we got down to the end of that race, talking about tires. And we were running, at that point in time, in the GT class, we were running one too.
Yeah.
We were approaching the ability to win that race overall, which is a very rare occurrence for a GT car to beat the prototype cars.
Yes.
But tire supply became an issue. All right. And
I don't remember that.
We needed a set of tires that you guys had.
They took it from us, Dale.
Yeah.
And so I had to make a decision. Okay. It was pretty clear. You were a couple laps down at that point in time. I mean, you weren't.
We were second in class, but a couple laps down.
A couple laps down. I mean, time-wise, I mean, it wasn't going to happen.
Yeah.
All right. But your dad was not willing to give up.
No.
And so I make the call, and we get the tires, and nobody in the team was upset. I mean, they all got it, except your dad. All right. And he come up to me. He says, "What's going on with these tires?" I said, you're a couple laps down. I said, we're battling for the overall victory in this thing. I said, you're going to be fine on the tire allotment that you have. Okay. You're just not going to have the super softs at the end. And I got to guard the position for the overall win. He looks at me and goes, oh, well, that makes sense. Okay. Yeah. He went right along with it.
Yeah.
But when he knew that tires were getting taken away, I mean, he wasn't giving up. Even if he was a couple laps down and only had 2 hours to go. He was not willing to take second place. He was still
Was there prototypes that year?
Yeah. Yeah, we had to wait for
I thought we finished first and fourth overall. I thought Ron won it overall.
We did.
Right, there was no prototypes.
There were prototypes racing. We
They
had
all
to wait,
broke out?
We had to wait for the Dyson the Dyson was the last prototype running. We had to wait for him to break.
Yeah.
And he finally broke.
Wow.
Yeah.
I do remember hitting pit wall coming off of. Y'all remember how tight?
Real tight.
Yeah.
It's the tightest corner on the
yeah.
track.
I bounced the right front off of the guardrail
Yeah.
once coming off pit road. God, that was the first time I got in the car.
Yeah.
That
was just leaving.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
But that happens all the time.
I know it, but it's just like
Jimmy Johnson rode off a car there in practice.
You don't want to be the guy.
Yeah.
No.
No. You don't want to be the guy.
Yeah, especially when your dad's Dale Earnhardt and he's on the same team.
Well, you got to remember, I didn't hit anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Until I did.
He loved being teammates with that. Like I said, that's the only time he's ever been teammates with anybody. It's probably the only time you've, other than Boris for a millisecond, right? That have been teammates with anybody. So it's a part of history for sure.
Yeah.
Well, it's a different mental dynamic because you know there's other people depending on what you do. And it's not just the crew guys you got to come back and answer to. You're answering to your fellow drivers as well. You got to respond. You feel a sense of responsibility to them.
100%.
And that's not something that in NASCAR you don't feel. I mean, it's your guy.
Yeah.
You're solo. I mean, it's me. I screw up. It's on me. Okay. Yep. You have to walk back there with your tail between your legs and you got 2 or 3 other guys looking at you like, what'd you just do?
Yeah.
Nobody wants to be in that position.
No. Like you said, you don't want to be that guy.
No, you don't want to be that guy.
So we run the race. I will say, having no idea what to expect every second. Leading up to the race, I was unsure about how the race would begin and what we were supposed to do. Where was I supposed to be? I'd never been a co-driver, and we go through the process of the race, and I started understanding what my role is and what Dad's role is, and each and everybody's individual role. We get to the finish, and we get to go to victory lane. We finished second class, 4th overall.
Yep.
And everybody seems happy. Our teammate won overall. We felt like, a couple things go this way or that, we win the race for sure. But we get to stand in victory lane. I would not realize till all these years later, I ran the race again in 04 and then did the race multiple times as a broadcaster, and obviously watched multiple versions of it at home. I wouldn't understand till later in my life how lucky we were to have been able to sort of cap off the experience with the opportunity to take our photo in victory lane, as some only a few teams get to do at the end at the end of that day. So that was pretty special.
100%.
Yeah,
very
especially
special.
for you.
Yeah, very special.
And when you were talking about at the beginning of the race, the cars are perfect and everything's beautiful, and the suits are all clean and everything. I think it was your dad. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think it was your dad that wanted to make another run of cars.
He did.
The dirty cars, the gold ones, the silver cars, the yellow cars, all dirty after the race.
Yeah.
Those became just as popular.
Yes.
I don't know.
Race versions.
I don't know if you guys, I don't know who was privy to this, but remember at the end of the ceremony, we were there weren't many people left, but there was a trophy. But there was one trophy. You remember this? Well, he calls over a guy who was one of the NASCAR people, one of the people that he knew. I don't know his name. Let's just say his name's Bill. He says, Bill, come over here. Said, yeah, hey, Dale, how you doing? Said, yeah, good. Said, see this trophy? Said, yeah, Dale. Said, one trophy. There's 4 drivers. He said, yeah, Dale, that's what we have. We have a trophy for one trophy for the team and all that. He says, Bill, there's 4 drivers and there's 1 trophy. And he said it again. And he says, well, he said, 4 drivers, 1 trophy. And he wasn't being mean. He just, okay, Dale, we'll see what we can do. Get some more trophies.
Yeah, we all got trophies. You got one, didn't you?
Yeah, we all got trophies.
Yeah.
It was your dad doing that.
Oh, yeah.
I remember that. I was just watching it back and forth, like the tennis match. Like,
Yeah.
and the guy
That's really
said,
funny.
There was never a request.
Yeah. It was priceless. It was priceless. I'll never forget it. It was like beautiful.
Yeah, that showed up in the mail.
Yeah, it did. Yes, it did.
That's pretty cool.
It was 100%. To your point about unique, it was so nice to get that, which is not normal.
Yeah. I know that there was plans to do that again, to run that car, maybe to run it back the next year. I'm not sure. Had y'all had those conversations?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Or he did too.
Absolutely. Well, this was like a seed. I think your dad looked at it as a huge opportunity.
Maybe even to race that year.
Yes.
Maybe.
Well, yes.
Yeah, or even in Le Mans down the road.
Le Mans.
Down the road
He
was
would
the
have put
conversation.
DEI motors in.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I think he had in his mind an idea of when he was going to get out of a race car. And I think it was relatively close time frame as to what that was. And I think his total experience, all the testing, all the racing, all the things we've talked about today, I think that kind of was helping fortify his decision to get out of this, that there was a new chapter to be written in his racing book. And it was going to be with Corvette. And I know he spoke to me and he spoke to others about it, that his dream, he quite frankly said to me, I'm going to do 1 more year of Cup. He says, and Doug, and then we're going to go Le Mans.
Yeah,
I'm getting me one
that
of these.
That was in my letter. It might be in his letter.
I'm getting me one of these cars,
Yeah.
and we're going to go do that 24 hours of Le Mans. I said, Dale, let's go do it. I mean, it had that kind of impact on him, where he suddenly was going to be comfortable walking away from NASCAR because he had a whole new mountain to climb that I think he was totally invigorated with, totally inspired with, and I also knew he had the confidence that he could do it.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
There wasn't a question of, he knew he could do this.
When we went back, when he went back on the Monday after, Steve Chris told me this. He said, he called Steve and he said, Steve, hey, trophy room. He said, let's start clearing out the trophy room. That's where we're going to do the Corvette program.
Damn.
That's what he said to Steve. And Steve told me that a couple of times.
And he referenced several times to, I guess him and AJ were buddies, and how AJ used to talk to your dad about Le Mans and in the Fords and all that stuff.
Right.
And he really loved that.
Yeah.
He was like a little kid listening to AJ is what he said.
Yeah, the enthusiasm for the whole thing was almost like you were talking to a 20-year-old or something.
Yeah.
Sometimes
It
was genuine. It really was.
It was a closet dream. You could tell that suddenly that the clouds had parted, and now this thing he had oftentimes thought about was right on the horizon.
Didn't you do something one time without him being there? There was a little meeting or something like that happened down in pit lane. Remember, and he wasn't included.
Oh, yeah. Well, to your point, remember when you said he wanted to be part of everything? He made that implicitly clear to me on several occasions. I want to be treated like every other person on this team. He didn't want any special Big E treatment.
Yeah.
Okay. And there was something going on that really totally innocuous. It didn't involve. There was no requirement for anybody to be there except the few people that were there. Well, it was crew guys. I forget what we were talking about, per diem rate or something going on. Well, he found out about that we had this meeting, and he wasn't there. And he was fingering chest. Fehan, I told you at the beginning of this thing, I want to be included. Yeah, sorry. I mean, I wasn't going to make any excuse, tell him what it was about. Just said, I'll be damn sure that, that doesn't happen again. But he was up in it.
And when we first got to Sebring, too. When we first got to Sebring, there was a big meeting. Everybody was around, and he said a few words, and he said, you treat us,
that's right,
you and him, like everybody else.
Yeah.
And that started it, and I think that also made people feel super comfortable.
Well, do you remember us having dinner? It was Sebring Cafe. Do you remember that little diner that we walked into to have dinner? Now, it's packed because of Sebring. I mean, where are you going to go? Yeah. And this was a relatively new place. The guy had opened up, had a restaurant in New York, and it was, all homemade food and that kind of thing. And so Claudio says, where are we going to go? I said, I'm going to go Sebring Diner. We walk into that diner, and it's packed, and the place goes absolutely silent. It was one of those things where people are looking at each other like, are you just seeing what I saw?
Yeah.
Is that Dale and Jr.? And you could hear, then suddenly the murmuring was coming up, but no one came up to the table. No one bothers. No one, your dad was inspired by that we could go and have that and not have anybody bother him, but everybody in that restaurant knew who was sitting at that table. It was a pretty cool experience.
Very cool. Yeah,
So,
a lot of stuff like that.
Yeah. Y'all, is there anything else about the day that we're leaving out, or the race itself, or the experience, before we move on?
Well, no, I mean, right after the race, we were up on the podium, and then everybody I had to go to Sebring or down to West Palm Beach to test some cars for Skip Barber, and he comes running over and he goes, hey, when am I going to see you again? I go, I don't know, soon. We're going to, you've talked about plans and stuff. That was it.
Yeah. When was the last time you talked to him, Andy?
The very last time I talked to him, mate, was actually during the 500.
Oh, yeah.
With the long yellow with Tony Stewart. Mm-hmm. And he said to me, because he'd invited me for the 500 to come. And so I actually stayed on his boat the night before the race.
Yeah.
And so it was like when you're towards the end of the race, he said, make sure you get back to the bus at the end because I'll be ready to go. He said that and there was an SUV there when I got back to the bus. No. And there's an SUV there back at the bus, and there were 2 police officers there with motorcycles, and that was it. But I walked back during that Tony Stewart yell. I walked back, and when I got back to the bus, Teresa was there. And she said, when I got in the door, she said, he's been asking for you. And I said, oh. And so I didn't immediately think about it, but then that was there like 3 or 4 minutes. It was still under yellow. And he said, does Andy have his ears on yet? And I heard it on the radio. And she said, here, he wants to talk to you. So I got on the radio and I said, hey, Dale, it's Andy. And he said, oh, you having fun? You having a good time? I said, yeah, I'm back at the bus. Everything's good. And he said, all right. He said, so anyway, you got any advice for me here? That's what he said. Can you imagine a road race? You got any advice for me? And I laughed just like you did just then. I kind of laughed at, no, Dale. I mean, to me, watching the race, as I tried to with my inexperienced eye, it looked to me like he had a 15th, 20th place car, and he just kept working his way back up to the front. So I said, Dale, just keep doing what you've been doing, man. You're doing great. You're doing awesome. And I'm like, what the heck else can I say to the guy?
I didn't know that. That's wild.
And that was it. And then it
might have been the last person.
Yeah.
Well, and there was an overall call on the radio that said green this time. And then it was like, okay, see you later.
Damn.
Crazy.
Yeah.
You've never told me that.
We didn't speak too much after that. Yeah. Those are things, honestly, I mean, there was a lot of stuff. These letters, I kept them for 20 years before I actually started bringing them up at Enthusiast for people that would appreciate them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you the same way.
Oh,
he was the same way.
Yeah.
It was, I think it was just out of respect for everything. But
when people come in my house and they read that letter, They're like, oh
Yeah.
my God.
Yeah.
Like, that's Dale? And I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
That was Dale.
Yeah. Yeah.
Before emails.
Huh?
Yeah.
Before email. Looks
Well,
like an email.
there was email. There
Yeah.
was email,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know? And I
Yeah,
only
right.
bring that up because after the race, I got hundreds of emails. And some of them, looking at them, were you the Andy that Dale was talking to under the full course yellow before on back to
yeah.
green?
I'll be damned.
But there were like 4 or 5 at that time. And I still got them. Actually, I printed them off
Yeah.
because I just wanted to keep them.
Damn.
But it was well, the emotional reaction, man. It was
Yeah.
people.
I was at my friend's
people
house,
really
And
cared.
Andy called me from the coach.
Yeah.
And you guys all knew
Yeah.
way before anybody else.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
just sitting there. We're having some beers and we're
Yeah.
all excited. And my girlfriend at the time, I just turned white.
It was
And-
so
I
had-
surreal at the
Yeah.
time. I mean, obviously, it's your dad, mate. you
Sure.
know.
Yeah.
I'd gone down to Atlanta to be with Panos. I don't know if you ever met Don Panos. He's a guy who owns Road Atlanta and a bunch of other stuff. Kind of a crazy guy. These guys know him.
Yeah.
And I was golfing, and I had radio with me, and I'm listening to the race. And the end of the race was pretty exciting.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm trying to pay attention to what I'm doing. Of course, the guys I'm playing with are pissed off because they're not race fans. And so I, put the radio down and finished up, and I walked into the pro shop. Okay. And of course, the guys there are all NASCAR fans, and they're all looking at the TV. All right. Race was over. And I look up, and now the full screen is a picture of your dad. And it was one of those pictures that wasn't a race winner picture.
Sure.
It was one of those remembrance pictures. And I'm looking at that, and I'm looking around, and the place is just absolutely silent. And everybody's just glued to the TV. And I said to the assistant pro guy at the corner, I said, what's going on? He said, Dale was just killing that wreck at Daytona. I said, no way. The race was just coming down. The race was over.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No. I can just remember, I'll never forget, just looking up at that TV and seeing that. I get emotional about it, but seeing that full frame, I mean, it was.
Yeah.
For everybody else.
It was just unbelievable.
Yeah.
It was just, I couldn't, I couldn't accept it.
Yeah.
Some
That's
of-
interesting. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's just some of the respect for the man.
Yeah.
There was, the racer, in some ways, people either loved or hated him, right? When they were doing the introduction to Daytona, the biggest roar was for your dad. I mean, it was. I was listening to all the introductions when I was sitting there. I was like, it was the biggest roar. You could hear some boos because people didn't like him.
Oh, yeah.
But man, the respect was there. And the emails that I got, and there's one example that when I went back to Daytona 2002, I was running a Corvette, not the factory Corvette. It was a different Corvette. I was running there, and we were on practice. And I'd come back from lunch, and I came in, the car, and the guy said, hey, there's a gentleman there. He's been waiting for you. And I said, okay. And it was an older gentleman. I mean, he was probably 80-something years old, older gentleman. And I went up to, sir, have you been waiting for me? And he said, yeah. He said, are you Andy Pilgrim? And he said, I said, yes, I'm Andy Pilgrim. And he said, son, can I shake your hand? And I said, yes, you can shake my hand. Of course. And he said, son, he said, Dale Earnhardt, he said, he thought a lot about you. And he said, Dale Earnhardt was like a son to me. And he said, I just wanted to come here and shake your hand because, what happened. And I was just choked. And I said, sir, would you like a drink? He'd driven there from Alabama, southern Alabama, to come there. And I said, were you staying for the race or anything? And he said, no, son. He said, I'm going to go home. He just wanted to come and shake your hand. Because he said, I think Dale Earnhardt thought a lot about you. And he wandered off, man.
Yeah.
He wandered off. And it was like that stuck with me forever, as it would. It was incredible. It was incredible.
I remember seeing him on
Respect.
TV. On TV, he was doing an interview, and the interviewer said, Dale, does it bother when you're up there on driver introductions, that whole crowd is booing you and hissing and that? He said, son, the only time it bothers me is when they're not making any noise at all.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Total sense.
When you're not evoking any emotion, you're not doing the job.
Absolutely.
I just
I don't
thought
care
it was
what
a
the
really funny
emotion is.
story,
I
too.
want some. Yeah.
I just thought of a really funny story. So I remember I had to go down to West Palm Beach after the race, and the only rental car I could get that whole week was a convertible green Mustang, right? So I'm now coming from West Palm back to Sebring to test some open wheel cars. And it's like 7:15 in the morning. I got to be at the track pretty quick. And sure enough, in the middle of nowhere, just about 5 miles out of Sebring, motorcycle cop pulls me over. I look in my mirror. He comes just like a movie, walking up in those tall boots like this. He goes, "You know how fast you're going?" I go, "Yeah, I know. I got to get to the racetrack." He goes, "Oh yeah, you got to get to the racetrack. I'm sure you do." And then he goes, "You been drinking?" I go, "No." And he goes, "Well, there's a bottle of champagne in the back seat."
Oh.
And I go, "It's empty." And he goes, "Can I see your driver's license?" He goes, "California, huh?" Like that. I'm getting a shakedown. He goes, "Kelly Collins." He goes, "You know, there's a guy driving with Dale Earnhardt Sr. and Jr. at Daytona last weekend named Kelly Collins." I go, "You got me." He goes, "What?" I go, "You got me."
Champagne bottle.
And he goes, "You're that Kelly Collins?" I go, "Yeah." He goes, "You were driving with Dale Sr. and Jr." And he starts stomping in the dirt like this and all this stuff. And I said, that's the podium bottle. And I gave it to him. Yeah. And then do you remember the next year at Sebring? All the cop cars came up.
Oh, yeah.
And they all hop out. And Doug looks right at me. He goes, "What have you done, Kelly?" Of all the people he could have said that to.
Well.
And in walks, his name's Ivan. And he walks in and anyways,
he's telling his buddies.
He's telling all his buddies.
I know this guy.
He did this to come rile me up. Right there at Sebring with like 6 cop cars. So he invites me over to his house for beers, and we have Corvettes to drive. And I go over there, and I have a beer with him and his whole family at his house, a little teeny house. And on the mantle of the fireplace is the bottle.
Oh, that's badass.
Wow.
That's cool.
Yep. Those are just great stories.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, priceless. I mean, just priceless. A lot of so much respect.
you know, you
for them.
talk about being later in life. Obviously, I'm later in life than most of you guys. You do begin to have just a whole new appreciation for where you've been and what you've done.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're talking briefly about when we flew out to the aircraft carrier.
Yeah.
I mean, we've had experiences that outside of racing.
All of us
But
here.
as
Yeah.
a family, all right, as a group, that no other teams have ever experienced anything like we have, I don't think. I mean, I've not run into anything like we did. And it was all part of what we were building at Corvette Racing.
Yes.
More than just racing cars, just a whole lot more than racing cars. And that we're still here today. This is what, almost 25 years ago. And we're still with each other. I mean, not a lot, but we're still in communication with each other all the time.
Yeah.
All the time.
I remember when me and Dad drove the car, and then the following years, the perception of the Corvette team was kind of like a fraternity, and to get invited to be a part of that was a massive accomplishment for any, especially for drivers.
Yes.
Like if you got called to be part of the Corvette team, that was quite the announcement.
Yeah.
And so, I understand. I mean, at least from my perspective, I was part of the team, but it was fun to be on both sides of it because I don't know, you guys were like superstars in your world, and the Corvette program was the elite program in that series, and it continued to be so after years later. There was a plan. Not only obviously to race the car more, but also Dad and I both had agreed to have production models of the car made. There would be a group in Michigan that would build production model Corvettes, and they were, the race car itself was 8 inches wider than a standard production Corvette, and they built this street version of this car, and it is identical, same front splitter and everything. I mean, it looks, and I remember when we were talking about what we were going to do when we got these cars, and Dad was like, I was like, I'm going to decal my car just like the race car, and he's like, I'm not, and I was like, why not? It's why this car is being built, and y'all are going to give us the wings off of the cars that ran Le Mans that year, and they ended up running 1-2 in Le Mans. And so he gets I think y'all, won Le Mans, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so he gets the car that has the winning wing, and or he gets the winning wing to put on his car, and this was all agreed to before the Daytona race, and so he passes away in Daytona. These cars still get built, and you guys go and race Le Mans. The wings are put on the cars. He did not want his wing cleaned. And so his wing still has the debris and dirt from Le Mans on it. It's a brand new, never been driven as far as I know, yellow Corvette that no one can ever buy on the production floor.
Awesome.
And
That's very
and it's
cool.
got that nasty old Le Mans wing on the back.
Yeah.
I have mine, and it's decaled. I've actually had to go back and re-decal it since 2001.
So you still have it?
Oh yeah. So my
cool.
decals got old, and I had
Yeah.
to re-decal the whole damn thing. And my wing is clean. I repainted my wing, and
Yeah.
and my car looks just like the one we raced.
Sure.
I actually drove it around town a little bit. Had to put another splitter on the front, but it's low. It's on the ground. It's low. But that was one of the cool things that came after the race. Considering how we lost Dad, being able to get that car, and he has his car, and I have my version, was a very proud thing for me. Another thing that we got to do, Andy, was race together in Canada.
Oh, yeah, sure.
remember that?
Yes,
Oh,
of course.
yeah.
Nationwide, 2007.
Yeah.
Canada
So-
and Watkins Glen. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there was I think maybe all of y'all, I know Ron.
Well, he had told him that he was going to put him in those.
Yeah.
And he
I
wanted
wasn't
me
sure
to
if
come
you-
drive truck.
Right.
He said,
thought
your
I remember that.
personality. Do you remember that? He
Yeah.
goes, and I go, I don't know. That's a lot of weekends. I'm thinking that's a lot of weekends away from the river and surfing. And he goes, yeah, but you'll make a lot of money, and I'll teach you all this stuff, and they're going to love you.
Yeah.
And that was kind of because they were going to start up the truck team or whatever. Do you remember that?
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that all just ended too. Yeah. It's
It
crazy.
did.
Crazy.
We invited you back, though.
Yes, I did get to come back.
Yeah. That
Yes, you
didn't-
did.
Yeah.
Which turned out to be
It was a day.
you did set a record.
What was the record?
The film of that was the most widely and frequently watched film in Sports Center history.
Oh,
Yeah.
the fire.
Yeah.
The fire.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about it. So, first off, I do remember Dad saying that he wanted to
Yeah.
run you in a race. So
Yep.
we stayed
Yep.
in contact
Yeah.
about that, and
Yes.
finally got that opportunity.
Yep.
And I mean, this close to winning
I know.
Montreal.
In Canada. I know.
So close.
This
Yeah.
close.
Oh,
I
so
know.
close. And you,
So close.
So Robbie Gordon wrecked somebody up front.
Yeah.
And
That was it.
you're driving by and
Yeah.
just caught him and cut the tire. But if you clear
Yeah.
that,
Oh, yeah.
you're gone.
Yeah, absolutely. First
Clear.
ever nationwide race. It would have been awesome. It would have been awesome.
I know. It
Yeah,
still was awesome.
Yeah. It was. The whole experience was great, man.
Yeah.
It was great.
I was so
really
happy.
great. Thank you for
That's a
that.
tough track.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
Thank
That
you.
was great. It was great.
I was so.
You were on the phone when I got out of the race. Steve said he's on the phone, and you were so excited. It was
Well,
great.
listen.
It was great.
So
yeah, yeah.
It was always really difficult to be in Dad's shadow, and it was difficult to try to like live up to certain aspects of his existence. But there's these rare moments, right, where I knew I could do something that he would be happy about. There was no question that, like, man, we're going to run Andy, and Dad would love this, for fulfilling this sort of prophecy, if you will. And
It's
so
something he would have done.
he would have done it. No
Yeah.
question. You would have ran a truck. He would have convinced
Yeah.
you,
Yeah.
and that would have absolutely happened.
Oh, I was convinced that
Yeah.
he was convinced.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of great things came out of that partnership, not only the friendship that we all developed driving together, but I got to become closer to Ron. I'd raced against Ron before, and that experience, I think, allowed us to, and I would lean on him for that next trip when we went to Sonoma.
Mm-hmm.
We went out to Winton or somewhere to test. I forget. We tested somewhere.
I do not.
Yeah, I remember flying somewhere out west or somewhere far away, maybe up Midwest somewhere, and testing all day long with Ron. And man, he pushed me, and I think I got within 0.3 of his lap time, and I was so happy. And
Maybe Gingerman, maybe Gingerman.
Yes, it
maybe.
was. That sounds exactly right.
Okay.
Were you there?
It's on-
Maybe?
No,
Oh.
it's possible.
It's
possible.
it's on the west side of the
Yes.
state. It's a little private track.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what they test sometimes.
Yeah, a little shorter
Yeah.
road course, but so much fun.
Yeah.
And we worked hard all day long to try to get competitive. And they were like, y'all were like, hey, who do you want to run with you? And I was like, do you know who Boris that is? And y'all were like, yeah, sure. And Boris was over the moon. He couldn't believe it.
Well, Boris had been on me for a long time
Yes.
to become a factory driver.
Yes.
My boss was not a Boris fan.
Yeah.
Boris and I, obviously, I've been around a long time. I know Boris for a long time. And very accomplished road racer.
Yep.
Totally qualified to be in the car.
Yeah.
And so I had made a concerted effort over the years to try and get him in as at least a third driver, which was a good place to start.
Yeah.
Because I knew he had potential, and he definitely wanted to be part of what we did.
did.
And we were friends. So, that makes it a whole lot easier. So
know.
this was, back to your point,
Yeah, you had Boris in here.
Yes.
Yeah.
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 I felt probably the only there was a lot of bad parts about crashing the car. So we had this little, kind of a little hot lap warm up session before the race, and I wrecked the car and under pace laps. And so my regret really is that Boris didn't get to.
he never got in the car.
Boris did not get to show to your point. He wanted to drive that Corvette so badly.
Yeah, he doesn't fail to bring that up to me.
Yeah.
I never did get to drive.
Nope, he didn't. But man, what a couple of days
that race
was.
car
Yeah.
was a brand new race car, and you guys had it for me and Oliver to drive at Miami.
Yeah.
Brand new car, and in morning warm up they told me to change your line over this bump, and it bounced me into the inside wall in fourth gear and into the outside wall, knocked a 10,000-pound K while my foot was dragging on the ground.
Yeah.
The whole front end off. That
Damn.
car never took the green flag.
Well, wait, I ended up driving it.
Huh?
I ended up driving with Ron at that race. I ended up driving that race. Yeah.
No, I thought it
At
sat.
Miami.
Hold on.
Not that car,
No,
but
not
another
that car.
car. The
This is-
backup car.
This is at the
Okay.
end. This is the end of my stint or my run with Corvette.
Yeah.
And then it sat Pratt Miller.
Yeah.
And they put a whole front clip on it. And the next person, and it didn't take a green flag either.
No.
So if it makes you feel any better, I think that car's jinxed.
Yeah. Well, it ain't. It's a melted puddle right now.
Yeah.
Because it was hot.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah, I remember.
It has an owner.
Yeah. I've seen pictures of it.
Does it really?
Somebody has it.
It's passed hands a couple of times.
Just the way it is?
A banker from Ohio bought it with approval. We
Sure.
we checked to make sure it'd be okay. And he put him back into the 2003 livery. Remember the cars
Wow.
were blue at Le Mans?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
2003.
Yeah, the anniversary.
Oh, no, I've seen the car at the Corvette thing up
Well,
in Laguna.
he bought both the cars.
Yeah.
And he took him back to that, and then this was back in 2007, 2008, and then banking. I mean, the whole world was up. The United States was upside down financially in those times, and he had tough times, and he ended up selling the car, and the car's now back to the race livery. And another owner has it. I see it at shows
That's
every,
pretty cool. I
every
have
once
the
in a while.
nose.
Yeah.
I have the nose from the Sonoma wreck.
Yeah.
In my shop.
Yeah,
Our race car from the 24 Hours is currently at the National Corvette Museum for a year.
Yeah.
Our race car's there. Yeah, it's currently on display for a year. It's
Is
just
it back
got
to
there
the
about a
original
month
form?
ago.
With the
my
5-speed gearbox
with my
or the
insert
transaxle?
with my insert. Lance Miller owns it.
Wow.
Lance
Yeah.
Miller owns it. It's there with the insert
Wow.
that you chop the top off because your
Yes,
shoulders are
that's
wider
right.
than mine.
Yeah.
You remember?
That's so funny, yeah.
Yeah.
I remember for at least the next year, maybe more, you ran the stripes on the left front fender.
Yes.
Yes, we did.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes. We
Whose
did.
idea was that?
Well, again, it comes down to Claudio. His creative mind is just, I don't know. Half of what he had would get you in prison if you ever did it. The other half was absolutely genius. And throughout the whole racing program, he came up with stuff. At Le Mans,
He was aircraft carriers. That was Gary.
That was Gary.
Yeah, that was Gary.
Got that
Yeah.
done.
Yeah.
When we went to Le Mans with the cowboy hats, and the
But we all
berets.
took the picture
Right.
on our car.
Yeah.
with the stripes on the fender.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
number three.
Yeah, so he would come up. He would come up with those things, and the impact you can't put into words the impact that it had on the entire team, because in their own little way, even though you were the right front tire changer or you were the guy who worked on the gearboxes, you were working with Dale and Dale Jr. You were at that race. That race had a huge impact on NASCAR. You guys probably don't remember this, but on that live broadcast, they would run a crawler across the bottom of the TV screen where people could call in and leave comments. And they would report those comments in that crawler. Yeah. They never had that before, only when just because you guys were there racing. And it was stuff like, man, I'm a huge NASCAR fan, but this road racing stuff looks pretty cool.
Yeah.
90% of them were all about how 24 Hours of Daytona was the coolest race they had ever seen.
Yeah.
Well, there was no Grand Am Series at that point in time. NASCAR saw all that and wrecked it because there was pushback of your dad wanting to run with that sanctioning body.
Yeah.
That didn't come free.
Right.
After that, the NASCAR minds got together and said, we got to look at this road racing thing. And that was really the beginning and the birth of the Grand Am. Because of the impact that you guys had on the NASCAR fans themselves.
Dale, we'd never seen the number of people. We talk about the pre-race walk-around. We'd never seen that many people in the stand across from the start and finish.
No.
It was because you guys were there?
No. Yeah.
I mean, seriously, it was a massive amount. Massive amount of people.
Huge impact.
Yeah.
It kind of gets lost in the...
Yes.
Within the whole story,
right.
But it was game changing for IMSA.
Yeah.
And then you looked in the following years. Now it's standard practice for NASCAR guys.
Sure enough.
To want to do it.
Yes.
But somebody had to really be first and to make the big mark. I'm not sure there wasn't a NASCAR guy that maybe had been there.
There were NASCAR before, but
never made a mark.
Not
this made
Dale
a mark.
Was different. Yeah.
With you guys there, it changed the whole dynamic. Of IMSA.
Yeah.
Because you brought a different demographic age-wise. You did, and your dad had his fan base, but you were a huge in a different demo. And I think it was like, lights went on with people that need to think about it.
The things that attract you, because gaming was just becoming a big deal. Mm-hmm. All right, you said at the time you spent playing video games, because it was all relatively new at that point in time. And the technology that was in these cars was not unlike gaming technology.
No. Yeah.
All right? I mean, one fed off the other. I mean, the amount of data that we supplied to the gaming people, we couldn't give them everything.
Nope.
But they had been so sophisticated that, I mean, you'd be giving away your competitive advantage. That's how good it was.
Look at the iRacing stuff.
Yeah.
We had to, it's crazy.
It all came from that.
I think so. iRacing launched live in 2008. This was probably, I remember where I was on the phone. I don't know if I called you, but I called somebody at Pratt & Miller and Chevrolet about the Corvette.
To get the data.
Get the data.
To
get the Corvette.
Exactly.
So I was calling them.
Well, it wasn't because you knew the guy.
Yeah.
You knew the guy.
Well, I was like, hey, iRacing, this is what iRacing is. This is in like 2009 where nobody knew what none of that was. I was like, iRacing's good. You want to be here. They want to put the Corvette in. But you just need to be able to scan the car and get a little bit of information to make it drive somewhat, it really does.
And I can tell you, because that was an uphill push.
Yes, it was.
For me.
Everybody was like, what?
I'm not.
Information, data. Nope.
But your endorsement of that, all right, and then having to sell it a little bit, understanding how important this was to our business, all right. I mean, if you can get kids racing Corvettes, in the iGame, that becomes an aspirational vehicle to them.
That's right.
I mean, we're selling cars, guys. That's the only reason we're here. That's 100%. The final distillation of what we do. Yeah. Your endorsement of that is what made that happen.
I was standing in my living room on the phone thinking, they probably think I'm crazy. Like, this is why are you bothering us with this silly game? What is this?
We're not doing video games.
No.
That was the pushback. But we managed to We broke through that.
Yeah.
Your endorsement made that happen.
Well,
You know, Dale, I just thought of something along those lines. When we first all got together, I think we were having dinner, and you said to us, like, what do you like to do? And you asked me what I like to surf and go to the river and all that kind of stuff. And you're like, that's kind of cool. And I go, what do you like to do? And you go, I like to drive RC cars. And I go, what? Like, next thing I know, because of you, I started racing
Oh, Jesus.
RC cars. Yeah. 1/10 scale buggies.
Yeah.
Associated, and then I went to Losi.
Oh, wow.
And it would race every Wednesday night for like 3 years.
Wow.
It got pretty good. Not as good as the pros,
Right.
but man, it's fun.
It is.
It
I
was
remember when
fun.
you did that. You started having
Remember
the cars
that?
at the racetrack.
It's like being at
I
Silver
remember
Bring
that.
him.
I remember
I would
that.
bring them to the
Honest to
racetrack.
God.
Yeah, that's all because of you. Isn't that funny? Yeah, I got really into it, and finally, I'm like,
You had
I'm
to
spending too much time rebuilding shocks, diffs,
Yeah,
tires.
everywhere. You're like, oh,
God, and it's not
Yeah.
cheap. It's like,
I was going to say, you can have a real vehicle for what it costs to do those
well, it
things.
was like a little mini race team, and I'm the driver, engineer,
Everything.
the mechanic,
Yes.
everything, transporter, driver. It's funny.
Hey, it's Dale Jr. Did you know that we've got brand new merch from our Stars, Stripes, and Beers collection available now? We've got tanks, tees, beach towels, and more just in time for summer. Check it all out at shop.dirtymomedia.com. I want to see where you guys have been since. We'll start with you, Andy. I know a couple things. You got heavily into highway safety.
Yes.
You got very passionate about that.
Yes.
And you went on to win the 24 hours, maybe a year
2004. Remember you were there?
or two. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, what are you up to these days?
These days, still doing traffic safety. And I've been helping. I still do some stuff with the National Corvette Museum and the racetrack over there, linked to the Corvette program.
Recently appointed board member.
Yeah, that happened
Damn.
too. Yeah, that
Congratulations,
did happen too.
by the way. I
know,
haven't had a
know.
chance to talk to you about it.
No, thanks. That's true. Doug mentioned that part. That is just happened. Also, the traffic safety stuff is you helped me with that. Remember that
yes, I did.
video?
Yep.
The first traffic safety video I made, I asked you if you might help in 2005, and you did. Teachers are still using that video.
Wow.
Because the things we brought up were paying attention, the distracted driving thing, which at that time wasn't a big deal. So there's that.
Even more important today, I imagine.
Oh, my goodness. Yes, huge. Absolutely. The other things, of course, racing. Racing continued up till with GM to 2018.
Wow.
Believe it or not.
Yeah.
And then I went into some SRO stuff and ended up with a friend of mine, Tony Bartone, the drag racer. His son is Anthony Bartone. And since 2021, halfway through, the kid came to the motorsports park, and I did a little bit of stuff with him. Told his dad. I actually told his dad. So his dad says, I'm sending the kid. He's a New Yorker, right? He says, I'm sending the kid to see you. Tell me if there's any good. I said, okay. 2 days at the racetrack, I told Tony. And I said, yeah, so actually, Tony's got some natural talent. And he's like, I knew it. That's my genes, like this. And I'm like, so Tony, what if I told you that he didn't have any talent? Said, it would have been his mother's fault. It's a true story. So I've been, since that time, I've been with Anthony, helping Anthony get started. I was racing with him in 22 and 23, GT4 and then GT3. So still doing the racing stuff, still doing the traffic safety stuff.
You're still driving?
Enjoying that stuff. Yeah, and I pulled myself out of the car so we got some really current pro Mercedes drivers with him. He's with the Mercedes team. And I'm traveling all over the world with this kid.
Wow.
All over the world.
You're leaving here?
From today, I go to the next 3 weeks. It's going to be Italy, Germany, France.
Damn.
It's crazy. So I'm still extremely busy, mate. Yeah.
Kelly.
Thanks for asking. Yeah.
Since then, I finished off that year, went to drive for BMW for 2 years, and then GM rehired me back to drive the factory Pontiacs for 5 more years. Mm-hmm. Andy and I raced.
Yeah.
Yeah,
with Paul Edwards many times.
Yeah.
We almost won that a couple times.
Yeah. Almost.
Speed limiter. So anyway,
Yeah. I remember that.
with Jan Magnus and everything like that.
Yep.
And then I started, that ended, and I would race Porsches for guys, and then I started doing pro coaching for like 9 years. I had a couple guys that I did and flew around with them in their jets for a long time. We had a really good time. And then I would do movies, stunts. I've been SAG for the longest. Most recent movie I did was Ford versus Ferrari.
Yes.
I won the Taurus Award for that, which is like the Oscar Award for best work with a vehicle. And then I just do a little bit now and then. I live out in Lake Havasu. I'm retired, and I just have fun.
Damn,
That's it, man. It was a great career.
Yes, sir.
A great career.
No more driving.
Nope.
Last time you ran a competitive race?
2013.
Damn, that's a long time.
Yeah, but I'm off-roading all the time.
I know. You seem like the kind of guy who could break from it pretty easily when you were ready.
I did.
Yeah.
I did. And people ask me that, and I'm just like, don't think I don't miss a good race car, like you were talking about. When it's on, but knowing when to step away, not dragging around.
Yeah.
I drove cars for Skip Barber for the race series for 11 years, get 30 cars every weekend ready to go, in and out. I mean, I wanted to be the guy that left and not straggling around the pits.
Sure.
Have a good resume, a good career, move on, be happy with what I did, and now I'm off to another venture.
What have you been up to, Doug?
Well, I hung around GM until 2020 pandemic as program manager for Corvette Racing, and enjoyed every minute of that. Pandemic kind of really changed the whole dynamic of Corvette racing. We had to miss Le Mans because we couldn't get our stuff overseas.
Yep.
We had been there for 20 consecutive years. That was heartbreaking. We had a management change at the top, and that resulted in my dismissal from the company. That lasted about 2 months. And then thanks to the fan base, they were not pleased that I wasn't going to be at races anymore. And so GM got back with me and said, would you consider taking on another role? And racing's a bad drug, as we all know. Mm-hmm. So I did. Since 2020, I've worked as a brand ambassador. So I do some things at the racetrack, Corvette corrals, speaking at those events. I do stuff for our sponsors for both Michelin and for Mobil 1. Do sales meetings and sort of things on that level. I'm kind of having all the fun stuff that I did anyway. I'm just not in a management role any longer. And that's okay. I mean, it's hard for me to go to the races and watch what's going on and not be able to have input.
Yeah.
But it's like having a kid. Eventually they leave home and they're on their own, and you kind of got to let them be on their own, and that's where we are right now. But I have enough. I'm still having enough interaction with them that I'm still enjoying it. I'm still having a great time with it. It gives me a lot more time to do. Golf is my hobby. Oh. And that requires a lot of time.
It does.
And
you got to be good at it.
My wife is
play a lot.
I wouldn't go that far, but you always work to get better.
Yeah.
My wife is very active in the golf industry. She's on the board of directors of the American Junior Golf Association, past president. So she knows everybody in the golf industry. And when you are shameless and have very little pride, I can coattail that to play the best places in the world with some of the greatest golf guys on TV. Yeah. And she knows all the kids you see playing on TV right now, she has known since they've been 12 years old. Yeah. So those relationships are fun to be around. And so I'm the spare time I do have, I'm enjoying doing that.
Let's talk briefly about the Corvette program. So you talked about how the pandemic had changed it a little bit. Some rules as well within the series changed the direction of the program, and the Corvette program, as I knew it, doesn't exist today. So. What is the state of Corvette racing and how has that changed?
Well, depending on what lens you want to look through.
Right.
All right. From a pure business perspective, as I said previously, our goal is to sell cars. Mm-hmm. For the first time in history, we're building right-hand drive Corvettes. So people in Japan and Australia are always, aspirational vehicle, as I said. Now they have vehicles that they can buy that are legal to drive on their road. Corvette racing, I'm going to say this right up front, and I'm going to do it shamelessly, and it was responsible for making Corvette truly become a global brand.
Agreed.
All right, by our participation and our success that we enjoyed at Le Mans.
Yep.
All right, we gained the respect of everybody on the planet.
Yes.
Every manufacturer, every race fan learned to respect Corvette for what we had accomplished. and that was our ultimate goal. I mean, that's why we race. It's way more than a checkered flag and a trophy, and I think we exemplified that. We now have independent teams racing.
Yep.
Okay, and that's a Le Mans. That's a Le Mans outcome. In order to race at Le Mans now, there are no pro teams allowed at Le Mans anymore.
Okay.
All right, so that's a huge change for us.
Big change.
All right, but only amateur teams, and you have to build. If you're going to compete at Le Mans, you can compete at IMSA, but if you want to compete at Le Mans, you have to build like 25 race cars and sell those race cars to competitors.
Damn.
That's the rule.
That's the box that has to be checked.
That's exactly right. And so when we talk about change, that's a huge change. So now at Pratt & Miller, I mean, I think we're just now on, we might be building actually more than 25. We were on chassis 25 and 26. We're just getting done. So that's been almost 3 years of constant car building. Yeah. So that's kept them very, very busy. And those cars are out there winning races as independent teams, which again takes the brand forward. That's a huge change that we didn't have pre-pandemic. That was again post-pandemic. So it's Pratt & Miller got sold during that same time frame, exact same time frame, to a company in Wisconsin, Oshkosh, not the kids' clothing line, right? But they make cement mixers and fire trucks. All the Jordan flatbed, that's a Oshkosh company. They're a global company, very diverse in what they build. And they have a huge defense division. And how that came about was that they were using Pratt Miller was doing their defense work. Oh. They were hiring Pratt Miller to do the defense work. Huh. And it just got to the point where they said, why don't we just buy the company? I mean, we're tired of writing them a check. Yep. We might as well just own them. And they did. So that has changed, all right, because now Gary Pratt's not there, Jim Miller's not there. So that, that's a whole dynamic shift. But the fan base is still there. Yep. And with little things that appear, we still have, the team stayed intact, all right? A lot of new young guys.
The team's intact.
Yes.
Where is the team?
The team is in New Hudson, Michigan. Yep. Same place, same building, same MO. This is a physical sport when you get over the wall. In the old days, the guys who built the cars were actually guys who raced the cars. Yes. I mean, same guys that were screwing the cars together were changing the tires in the pit stops. Yeah. All right. Well, and as competition levels rise, that dynamic changes. And those guys get older. I mean, you get to be 45, 50 years old, slinging a tire over the wall is not that you don't want to do it or that you can't do it. It's just that a guy who's 22 years old is going to be able to do it a little bit faster. Yeah. And that becomes critical. Yeah. So there's been a huge influx of young guys. And the beauty, getting back to what we created, you said it so well, what Corvette being the premier. I mean, we're the best sports car team in the world, in the history of the world. When you look at same brand, same mark, same team, nobody has come close to doing that. Yeah. It became a preferred place to work. So, we had way more applications than we had job positions. Yeah. And so you get the cream of the crop that come aboard. So watching these new young guys come in, because we have way more young guys now than we ever did before, is very gratifying. For me personally, winning always is important. All right, winning is one of the primary objectives of what you do. But from a personal perspective, after you have that down, and I'm not saying these victories aren't important and that they're not emotional, they are. But as a person, as you develop, as I developed anyway, racing was always important, but watching the people progress became more important to me. I became way more of a people person. I always thought I was a people person, but I became way more involved. I mean, when you think about in my career personally, Danny Binks, all right? Danny started for me in 1988 at Cars and Concepts on another program. He wasn't even married at that point in time. How we ended up, his son was working Ganassi doing the Ford GT. Okay, they were in business together now, but watch that happen. I had Wayne Taylor in 1996 as my driver when we won the IMSA WEC championship. And then had Jordan and Ricky both driving for me. Yep. On the Corvette program. Yeah. You watch all that develop and how everybody has worked to change those people's lives. That is what has become really important to me. Yeah. And the people that stay in contact, people who these guys, they stay in contact with me. Crew members stay in contact. Other drivers stay in contact with me. My phone rings all the time with people asking questions, looking for advice. I'm doing this. What do you think? Can you help? I mean, we've created a relationship there that has been so rewarding.
Yeah.
As rewarding as any trophy. Yeah.
Well, it's pretty remarkable, and the Corvette brand definitely has, definitely become so appreciated across the world and especially in the United States because of its performance on the racetrack. And I know you take a ton of pride in that and your involvement in that, and you should. And you're right about everything you said. It was for me personally, especially after getting to know the team as I did driving the car in 01 and 04, you were the home team. Every time you went overseas or anywhere else, the entire country almost banded together to cheer the Corvettes on to victory, and you always gave the Corvette team was always in contention, which was always fun.
Yeah, and we had it, like I said, I brought up Gary Claudio a couple of times, but you got to meet him, and he's just a remarkable individual, and was largely responsible for we could have another whole show about Le Mans, and we probably should. Okay, because that's a whole nother genre, a whole nother story about what made Corvette great.
Yeah,
and he played such a key role in doing that, and we had so much fun doing it. So did we not?
Yeah, it was fun. It was
huge.
a lot of pressure. You talk about like Daytona and stuff like that.
Yeah,
that kind of came second nature because I was already racing that kind of stuff. But when you go there, your start time's different. Getting to the track, the food, the times, the
hotel accommodation.
The way you pull into the pits, where they have a rope and they pull everybody out of the way.
Yeah.
There's no pit wall. And the amount of pressure, if you forget to go into pit lane, you're done because you're not going to make it 8.5 miles around.
No.
So there was a lot of pressure, like I think what you felt, that I raced there 4 times and I still felt pressure at the end because at the time you're racing for the largest company in the world, representing. And I'm just some little rugrat from Newport Beach, California, driving their race car. So it was a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
As I say, it's worthy of a show.
I've never have been to Le Mans. I've always wanted to go and know.
It's intense.
Yeah. Even like in the last several years, there were some opportunities to join Corvette and go along. I think Ron asked me Ron was going to take care of me and get me over there a couple times, but we just never could make it work.
Yeah. And just a quick story. I mean, when Herb hired me, our dream was to get to Le Mans, and that was not something GM was ever going to support. I mean, you have to understand the corporate world. It's not just General Motors; it's all big corporations. But we knew that the regime was not in place that was going to support us. And when Corvette came along and with the new car, the C5, we saw that as an opportunity to strike.
Yeah.
All right. And so as that's progressing, Herb is saying, you got to get over there and check this race out. I said, Herb, I've been racing since I've been 3. I've been to every racetrack in America. I said, I'm not good. It's just going to be another racetrack. I had never been overseas. I wasn't excited about going overseas just by myself.
Yeah.
Speaking a different language. I mean, it's pretty intimidating. So I was figuring every excuse on the planet trying to. Well, we had that argument for about 6 months, and finally he won. It looks like we're going to go. You got to get your ass over there. Okay, fine. So I get over there, and I find my way through the airport and on the train, and everything's a challenge. I'd never been in a country where they didn't speak English.
Yeah.
All right, not by myself. I mean, it was a struggle, but I got there. I had a little help along the way. I can remember driving the car, coming down the hill, as you're coming from the hotel, and you make a right-hand turn down this hill, and on the left-hand side is the entrance to Le Mans, and it's 3 giant orange-red spires, which is their like logo. I mean, that's what Le Mans is. Mm-hmm. And I thought to myself, holy shit, I'm at Le Mans. I pulled in there and parked and saw what was in that paddock, and I went from Mr. Know-It-All to how the hell are we ever going to do this? When you see what has to be done, and you guys know what has to be, what's constructed there on a temporary basis for one race, building after building after building, 6, 7, 8 stories high. They're just for one race, and everything is different. The learning curve was huge when we first got over there. I mean, it was overwhelming, and it made us better.
Ron and Johnny and Andy and me, and Frank, we were all in a minivan, pouring rain, crawling all over each other, stuck in there. We were doing laps on the Mulsanne, and the chicanes are blocked off, and we're looking at everything we can. They made us sit over there for like 5 or 6 days, just driving around the track and taking everything in, so that the experience wasn't going to be like what he experienced.
Yeah,
because that's part of the track's public.
Yes,
it's public
so we
roads.
could do that, but half of it isn't, obviously.
Yeah.
But part of it was, and you just drive around it like, yeah,
It was crazy.
It's crazy. I'd raced there before with Porsche back in 96, 97, so I was kind of there helping a little bit because I knew
You and
some of the
Frank
stuff.
were our helpers.
Yeah,
to get us
exactly.
up to speed.
Yeah,
We got to have a show, and it will inspire you. It's a bucket list. In 2011, National Geographic magazine, the #1 automotive magazine in the world, National Geographic, said that 24 Hours of Le Mans was the greatest sporting event in the world.
Yeah.
It is so different in its implementation and presentation than anything we have here, and that's Daytona and Indy included, which are great spectacles. There's no question.
For sure.
But Le Mans, it's worthy of a show.
I need to get there. Well, man, I appreciate y'all coming through. Man, this has been a lot of
Appreciate it,
fun.
Dale.
Yeah, it's good to
thank
see
you very much.
This
man.
came about
Thank you so much.
in March. I was down at the 12 hour, and I go up to sit and hang because I'm coaching a guy, and I go, boy, it'd be really neat to get on Dale's show this many years later. Your fans might really like to hear some stuff that they'd never heard.
Yeah.
And so he says, call Andy and have Andy call you. And that's how this.
You were immediately called back and said, that's a great idea.
It is.
And I was like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, it's very unique. We've never done a show like this.
Well,
And
thank you for doing it, man.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I love that we could all be at the same place at the same time.
Yeah.
Hard to get everybody on
25 years later.
Yeah.
Yes. 25 years.
Like I said,
25, yeah.
that's what once a Corvette racer, always a Corvette racer.
Yeah.
That's
That's
really
what
cool.
I loved about it.
Yep.
Like I only ran like one race with you guys, and I've been part of the family.
Yeah,
ever since.
absolutely.
since.
Yeah.
Absolutely, baby.
100%.
You're wearing the brand.
Yes.
Yeah, it is cool. Thank you, Dale.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very
Thank
much
you.
indeed.
All right, that's Andy Pilgrim, Kelly Collins, and Doug Fehan on the Dale Jr. download, telling stories from the 2001 Daytona Rolex 24. And I hope y'all enjoyed it. It was an idea to get us all together all these years later, and maybe I could hear some things that I didn't know happened, or some conversations or experiences that they saw from their perspective. It was a great experience for me. I look back on it very fondly. And, certainly there's the, the aspect of the race and the things that happened throughout the race, and wondering what could have been or how we might have been able to win had we known everything we didn't know. But just a great driving race car. We were put in a position that made us comfortable. I think the task for Corvette Racing and Pratt and Miller was a tall one to bring Dad and me, and not just one driver but two, that were totally unfamiliar with not only the car but also the style of event and the approach and strategy. All of those things were going to be completely unique to what we used to do in the NASCAR realm. In NASCAR, and Dad was pretty quick on picking that part up. We know Dad drove wide open all the time in his Cup car, and all of his life in NASCAR and everything he'd ever done was driving and working and going as hard as he could. But he knew right away in the 24 Hours of Daytona that he needed to get a comfortable pace, and it didn't need to be a remarkable one. And so he picked up on that quicker than I did. I wanted to run fast. I ran every lap as hard as I could, testing, racing. I wanted to try to get closer and closer to Andy and Kelly's times. And it was a competition all the time. And Dad wasn't worried about that at all. He never looked at the stopwatch. He just tried to do what was comfortable. He did not want to damage the car or do anything that was going to hurt our chances. And I don't think once the race started that he did anything wrong. I hit the fence coming out of pit road once, spun the car into the grass, dropped a wheel in the bus stop and broke a half shaft in the rear, which is basically like the axle out to the left rear or the right rear tire. So, I mean, I was all out there beating and banging and throwing the thing around, and he just was real smooth, and he knew that was what needed to happen for us to have a flawless race, and it really didn't matter that, it didn't matter if you were half a second off the best guy, or it didn't matter, because everybody was going to have trials and tribulations throughout the event, and he just limited mistakes, and that was going to be exactly what you needed to do to win that race. We were in a GT car. The prototypes outclassed us by a second or more, and they were the ones that should win the race if everything goes okay. Well, they all broke and had trouble, and so it was rare for our class to actually win the overall. So we had a real shot at just winning the whole thing if everything goes well. But we would end up in second or third overall and fourth in our class, or second in our class, fourth overall, something like that. I think that's what it is. But pretty cool experience, and thankful for them to come all this way. They came from different directions to be here today to give us this story, and I'm very thankful for that. That's a big ask for anybody to travel in just to sit down for a little time just to shoot shit. So fun story. Hope you enjoyed it. Great way to look back on an event that was important to Dad. And yeah. So we'll see. We'll see what y'all think. It's time for the white flag. The teardown with Jordan Bianchi and Jeff Gluck dropped after the race. Jordan was at the race in Charlotte. Gluck was at the Indy 500. Both of them saw both races from two different perspectives. Pretty cool to hear them come together and share their stories and experiences and opinions, and they always have great ones. Good debate and good dialogue. Great show to watch, the teardown. And actions detrimental with Denny Hamlin's out as well. Denny almost became a player late in the race for the win at the 600, had some fuel issues that brought him back to pit road late. We get to hear his perspective from the race all night long, and it was a fantastic race. Door Bumper Clear is out. Larry McReynolds was the guest this week. Great to hear from Larry, and also our Dale Jr. Download Dirty Air episode is also available. Jordan Bianchi joined me as TJ's still out a little bit. He's going to be back in a week or two. But a lot of great content. And Connor Daly dropped another Speed Street. We get to hear from Connor and his experience at Indy, leading laps and having a shot there late in the race. Always good to hear from Connor, especially around the Indy 500 event in the month of May. And Herman Schrader dropped another episode this week. And Bless Your Heart will be out tomorrow. Me and Amy will do another episode of that. For anybody that's going to be in Nashville for the race this weekend on Sunday, at 1:30 local time, I think that's Central in Nashville, in the fan zone, me, Steve Letarte, and Adam Alexander, we're going to do a half-hour live show for Dirty Mo Media in the fan zone, Sunday on race day, 1:30 Central time. Come out and check us out. It should be a lot of fun. We'll preview that the action for the event later that evening, as a couple teams will be lining up to try to capture success and victory in Nashville. So that live show will be presented by Hellman's Mayonnaise, a great partner here with Junior Motorsports and Dirty Mo Media. Should be a lot of fun. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Thanks for supporting us here at Dirty Mo Media and the Dale Jr. Download. We'll see you next week.